We'll start with the item 19, which is calling meeting to the order. I want to ask all of us to please turn our cell phones to silent. I know I have to do that too. You may notice the board members accessing their laptops, phones, or other devices during the meeting. They're using their devices to access the board meeting material that are in the electronic format. This is an official business meeting of the Medical Board of California. As such, disruptions of the board's business will not be tolerated. We have designated time on the agenda for public comment, and I ask public comment on each agenda item. I ask that you be respectful of the need to conduct board's business. Should anyone disrupt the meeting, I will ask the person to conduct him or herself in such a manner that permits board to transact its business. This meeting will be available via teleconference. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by a moderator who will be facilitating a teleconference process. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before you make your comments. To request to make a comment during the public comment period, press *1. You will hear a tone indicating you are in queue for comment. If you change your mind and do not want to make a comment, press *2. Assistance is available throughout the teleconference meeting. To request a specialist, press *0. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. During agenda item 20, public comments on items not on the agenda, the board has limited the public comment period for individuals on the teleconference to 20 minutes. In addition, public comment from individuals here at the meeting will also be limited to 20 minutes. Therefore, after 20 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. During public comment period, comment on any other item, 10 minutes will be allowed for comments from individuals on the teleconference line and those in the audience. After 10 minutes, no further comments will be accepted. Business services staff will be assisting me with receiving the public comments via teleconference during this meeting. I just want to make sure that we usually don't follow strictly those timelines, but I'm going to do that today because we might lose quorum if we go too long. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and its board's intent to ask public comments prior to board taking action on any agenda item. It's for some reason I forget to ask the public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand or come forward and you will be recognized. I'd like to request all speakers to complete a presenter slip so I can call you by name at the appropriate time and that the record of this meeting can be full and complete. However, this is voluntary. Please give your slips to Ms. Cruz Jones. I'll do my best to call upon everyone who has supplied a slip for the agenda item and recognize those who wish to make a last-minute comment. I want to remind all speakers to please stay on topic and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Today's meeting will be run according to the Open Meetings Act as required by law, and we plan to end the meeting by 1 p.m. I would like to ask Ms. Kirschmeyer to introduce any individuals at the audience. Are there anybody? Okay, thanks. Okay. I'll call the meeting to the order and ask Ms. Cruz Jones, please call the roll call.
Dr. Bolat?
Present.
Dr. Hawkins?
Here.
Dr. Kraus?
Present.
Ms. Lawson?
Here.
Dr. Levine?
Here.
Dr. Lewis?
Present.
Ms. Pines?
Here.
Ms. Sutton-Wills? Mr. Wormuth?
Here.
Ms. Wright? Dr. Yip?
Here.
Dr. Gonadev?
Here, and the quorum is present. I'd like to remind the members again that we'll be taking roll call vote on action items, on all the action items. We'll go to agenda item 20, public comments on items not on the agenda. Got some people. Okay, got a few. William Allen McGregor.
There.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Please go ahead.
I'm here for two agendas. The first one will not be the second agenda topic.
Put the mic close to you, please. Or put it on too, so make sure it's on.
Hello?
Yeah.
I have one topic. It'll be item 27 that I'll also be speaking my 3 minutes. For this item, this is a preemptive 227, but it talks about a different subject. I want to talk about pharmaceuticals and people. I've identified that there's a group of people, and it's a percentage of the human race, that have had good results with prescription pharmaceuticals. Good outcomes. If that percentage is known, that would be a data point that I would want to capture. Then there's another group of people, prescription pharmaceuticals. They are the people that had bad results, and some of them died. That percentage of the human population, I would think that would be important. Then there's a third group. I call it group 1. What is the percentage of these humans? This population of humans have a right to say no more. Going holistic, especially when needed. Cannabis is holistic. Then the people, especially older people, pharmaceuticals may have run them through the mill. Time with bad rub, over time with bad results. The older this population of humans is, the more times they might have encountered bad prescription drugs but lived. How damaged are they? That's just one topic I wanted to comment on. I would like to share some of the prescription medications I've taken and stopped. Is that okay?
Your time is going up, so please make it fast. Yep.
Okay. Seroquel, 3 times a day, 12 years. Neurontin, not very good, discontinued after 1 to 2. Mobic, removed during cannabis treatment. I was tetracycline baby, child. Vioxx, heart palpitation. Nexium, taken away by insurance, and I had bad reflux. Valium.
Sir, please conclude.
Okay. I will speak at item 27, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next one is Ed Hollingsworth.
Good morning. My name is Edward Hollingsworth. Speaking for myself, you'd think after 38 years of teaching I'd be a morning person, but that's never happened. Anyway, I will admit to you I came here yesterday more to castigate the board than anything else, and then you took away my fire. You have this app coming out, which I think is really incredible. You're supporting the Patient Bill of Rights, which I think is phenomenal. I was set to confront Dr. Krause for a comment he made last time, and then I saw him meet with Eric and was very pleased with what you did on the resolution there. That was nice. So all I have left is the problems I have looking at the people that are suffering so greatly and the light actions taken against the doctors that have committed these egregious things. A woman who was raped, a woman who was now basically deformed. I had a doctor when my wife, when we were in arbitration, who had prescribed these drugs and told us there's nothing stronger than Tylenol. In fact, the hospital even called us in and talked to us and said, oh no, it's just really light stuff. And they'd put my father-in-law on Risperdal and Halidol. And then at the arbitration, he sat right next to me and he lied. He flat out lied. And being only the son-in-law, I wasn't allowed to say anything or to confront this person. I'm asking you to stop treating these people that are committing these egregious things so gently. And I've been a teacher for 38 years. If I were to do just one of the myriad of things these doctors have done, my credential would have been yanked and I would have gone to jail, deservedly so. You guys on this committee took an oath to protect the people of California. The people. Medical doctors also have the Hippocratic Oath, which I believe the first rule is do no harm. And by giving these light sentences and letting these doctors go, you are allowing them to do harm. And therefore, so are you, violating that oath. So basically, I'm saying, please start standing up to these doctors and stopping these actions. Okay, you've made progress, and I applaud you sincerely. So all I can say about the other thing is, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollingford. That's it. Any other public comment from the audience? Comments on the phone?
We have a comment from Eric Andrist. Your line is now open.
Go ahead, Mr. Andrist.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to have come again today, but I just couldn't afford the expensive parking again. One of our advocates used the valet, and it ended up costing her $43 just to park. It's a good thing that you bring these meetings regionally, but you should really take into consideration the costs of the location. I did some research a couple of years ago after Carrie Webb, staff attorney, refused to send me a budget breakdown on the costs of a regional meeting. I spoke to the city of Burbank, who has a beautiful city council chamber with video capabilities, a large hotel nearby, and their own airport, and they told me at the time they've never charged anyone to use their facilities. I gave that info to Carrie, but I guess she just tossed it. Wouldn't hurt to look into it. And I see that the cameraman just focused on the table skirt instead of you guys again. That's passive censorship. As much as it may not seem like it from my demeanor sometimes, I enjoyed being at the meeting yesterday, and I hope you can see now how passionate I am about patient safety and on trying to help make this board the best it can be. I've said it before, but it's because this board wrongly closed my complaint against the doctor who killed my sister that you all now have to endure my presence on these matters. Doctors are reprimanded for their wrongdoings, well, at least sometimes. But there seems to be no accountability when the medical board doesn't do its job properly or when they break the law and don't follow their own guidelines. And we don't really hear about any of you in your off-meeting time fighting to make change and making this board better. You can sit back and gripe about not having any money and not having any investigators until you're blue in the face, but unless you take your heads out of the sand and get out there in the trenches, the status quo will always remain. I gave up my career in show business to care for my sister full-time for a decade. When she was gone, I didn't know what to do, was a decade older, and couldn't really get back into my profession. I now volunteer full-time on patient safety issues, working on our website at forpatientsafety.org and monitoring this board. As I said yesterday, I read nearly every word of the disciplinary charges of every document that comes in your emailed alerts. I just did my taxes, and I made a total of about $1,800 last year in my little notary side business. So I couldn't really afford to come and pay the exorbitant parking fee. I did this because it's all very important to me. So it really meant a lot when a few select of you came up to me yesterday, introduced yourselves, and even took a minute or two to chat with me. I think Dr. Krause and I learned a little about each other yesterday, and I hope that it will lead to a much better relationship. I'd like to be able to work with all of you and with the board staff. If you'll all agree to work with me, I will work harder to make my demeanor with this board better. On the other hand, if I continue to get brick walls and non-responses to my emails, then it will show that you don't care about me, my help, and making the board better. I fear that my relationship with Carrie Webb, staff attorney, is just a lost cause. She's far too belligerent, non-helpful, and breaks too many laws in her job to protect the board. She was snippy with me yesterday when I asked a question and she refused to answer. And then the very next person who spoke after me asked a question, and the board answered it. It's kind of like your behavior on
Please
picking
conclude.
and choosing which of your guidelines to follow, and when assigning discipline to a doctor, you can make exceptions if you truly want to. My email address is stopmicra@gmail.com. That's stopmicra@gmail.com. I promise Dr. Krause not
Mr.
to
Andrus,
private email
please
address when he
conclude.
offered to stay in touch with me unemployed.
Excuse me, caller. One moment.
Thank you, Erica. Actually, I wish you would be here. Who else is on the phone?
And we have another comment from Michelle.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
To urge you to support Consumer Watchdog's Patient Bill of Rights. As I discussed with all of you in October meeting last year, you never would have had to put up with me for the past 13 years and the nonprofits I've brought forward to watch the work of the board had you just investigated my case. There is nowhere else in California where a Californian can die and it won't be investigated. If a Californian dies in the street, the investigating agency doesn't say, oh, just bag this body. We don't need to investigate this one. Each death needs to be sent to investigation. Secondly, as I stated in October, the consumer needs another step in the complaint process. After the doctor is interviewed, the consumer must be given opportunity to address those comments. If the case is deemed to be closed at the Central Complaint Unit, then give the consumer the opportunity to provide their input before the case is closed, instead of just sending us a form letter. This will not only bring the consumer some closure, but it will also improve the enforcement process as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No additional comments from the phone.
Thank you. So we will go back to agenda item 10, Jennifer. Now you got to reel even further than turbo speed, Jennifer. We need to finish this meeting in time. What did I do with mine?
Okay, so where we left off is SB 1109. So this bill would require existing pain management CME courses, and this is the one-time mandated CME that's required, to include the risks of addiction and overdose for physicians licensed on or after January 1st, 2019. This bill would also require a warning label on all Schedule II controlled substance prescription bottles on the associated addiction and overdose risks. This bill would require a minor's and a parent or guardian's signature on a specified form after a required consultation and discussion with the prescriber, as specified, and that starts on page 2 of your analysis, for any minor receiving an initial opioid prescription. This bill does include some exceptions to the informed consent discussion requirements. This bill would specify that failure to comply with the informed consent and written consent requirements may subject the prescriber to disciplinary action for unprofessional conduct. Lastly, this bill would require an information sheet on the risks of opioids to be signed by a minor athlete and his or her parent or guardian before participation in an organized sports team. This bill will increase education for physicians and patients, which will further the board's mission of consumer protection. Board staff was suggesting the board take a neutral position, or we could also take a support position.
Ms. Lawson.
How is this different than, sorry, I'm looking for the number, Assemblymember Burke's bill.
2487? The Burke bill put a 5-day limit on opioids.
Right, but it also had this form
So
requirement.
this isn't a form requirement. It's
Okay.
just that you have to have this particular discussion and go over the risks of opioids. And then it's just informed consent, but it's not on a actual form that the board has to develop and put this particular form. It doesn't really specify how the informed consent looks. It's just, you have to have this informed consent that includes these elements, and it has to be signed, but it's not an actual form that the board has to develop.
Okay, so it does need to be, the analysis says it needs to be obtained in a form that's separate from another document, so, but it's a form that they would
Yeah, so
prepare.
everyone could be different as long as it meets the requirements of the bill.
Thank you.
Right.
What happens when you, oh, sorry, it is. It's more of what happens when they go through the process of providing that information to the patient, basically. So, but this one doesn't require a form, so that's more along the normal lines of the standard of practice.
It does have to be signed to show that they did have that discussion with the parent or guardian, and then they have to talk about specific topics. So, and it's all related to opioids and the risks of addiction and misuse.
Did I hear something wrong, Jennifer? Did you say something about CME too, or only just?
Yeah, so the existing requirement, it's already required, every physician has to take a 12-hour one-time pain management course, and so it's adding to that requirement that part of that course they just have to talk about the risks of addiction and overdose. So it's something that's already required, it's just kind of adding to it on what needs to be part of that course.
So let me ask you, what can be, there are two options, either neutral or support if amended. So I'm just trying to see what kind of amendments we could have.
No, I was just suggesting neutral or support. I wasn't suggesting amendments.
No, I mean, do you have any concerns where we can ask for amendment? That's what my question is.
I mean, I haven't identified any concerns because it's not a new requirement for CME. It's just adding on to the existing requirement just to make sure the CME for physicians after January 1st includes the risks of addiction and overdose. I'm sure a lot of the pain management courses already include that, but it would just require that component to be included in the existing pain management requirement.
Okay, Dr. Levine, and then Dr. Hawkins.
So, to Ms. Lawson's comment, as I read this, it sounds like prescribing an opiate to a minor would then involve two different consent forms. Is that correct?
I think it's just a required discussion, which wouldn't.
Nope. It's got to be signed.
No, so required discussion is one of the requirements. The other requirement is a consent that has to be signed. So
right. So there is a board, or at the moment anyway, a bill that would require the board to develop, or someone to develop, a consent form for prescribing an opiate to a minor.
Right.
And this would require a signed form.
It doesn't specify exactly. You have to go over these points, but it's not like we have to develop a form that has to be in every
I'm thinking of it from the perspective of the family and the prescriber. They're dealing with potentially two separate forms.
Right, if they were both to pass, correct.
If they're both to pass.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I said there has to be some amendments, but we'll come back to that. Dr. Hawkins.
Sort of a comment or a question. The question is, are we confirming if physicians are actually meeting that requirement of actually taking those courses? That's a question. And the comment is that I'm in favor of all physicians having an update on opioid use, abuse, approaches to treatment with a specified curriculum.
Yes, we are checking to make sure that every physician meets the required CME requirement for pain management.
And also the pain management courses are actually now including the opioid issue, because before Dr. Cross just showed me something in 2001 that we were somewhat responsible, because we said that if somebody wasn't prescribing appropriately for pain, we were going to be taking disciplinary actions on them. So it's the entire state of California who was involved in this one when pain became that issue. But my understanding is that many of these courses which are mandated, that's the only mandated CME, and that's probably a better way to go rather than create another mandate that include under pain management opioid issues. Brenda.
I have a couple of questions. One, there's nothing, because there's not a specified form that needs to be used, there's nothing that prevents the form mandated in the other bill being used for these purposes, right? Just having a uniform.
They might be a little bit different in what's required. So this bill has certain requirements on what you have to discuss with the patient and what they have to sign off on, and the other one has certain specifications. So I'd have to compare them and see if they match up, and then rectify it that way.
Yeah, you can harmonize those forms to have one form.
Right.
The second thing, I'm just not clear on whether there's an overall requirement for more CME or just to have specific CME included.
There's not a requirement for more CME. So all physicians are required to take a one-time 12-hour CME on pain management. So this is saying after January 1st, 2019, that one-time 12-hour CME on pain management has to include the risk of addiction and overdose for physicians. So it's the same 12-hour requirement. It's just making sure that it includes that component.
So, and can you also let me know why neutral instead of support in your recommendation?
We could take either position.
Okay.
I just want to clarify that it's going to be where the individuals that have to take this with this new additional element of the CME is going to be anybody that's basically licensed after January 1st.
Yeah.
So because everybody else has already taken it. They've already had to take it because it started in 2001. So this is going to hit all new licensees that come into California, basically.
Okay, Dr. Yip.
It's not exactly related to the bill, but the general atmosphere. This is one-time CME. What I've been doing for my regional hospital is actually working with the anesthesiology department, work on some education for pain management, giving to patients who came for surgery, who was admitted for like anything related to stone disease or cancer pain. My professor 30-some years ago told me pain management, first step is communication education, is a perception. Like Dr. Krause said 5 years ago, everybody into pain management is to cure all the pain, and we have this opioid crisis. Now I think we need to pass on our partner next door, California Hospital Association, that hopefully they can get involved into teaching and spreading the message of pain management as a first step before they even take any medication related to pain.
Right.
Okay, any other comments before we ask for a motion? Okay. Dr. Levine.
So I think Ms. Sutton-Will's comment is really important in that perhaps a support, if amended, to harmonize the consent requirements so that they're asking the authors to work together to ensure that there's only a single consent form that's required in the prescribing that contains all the elements anybody wants, but that there is a single consent form. I think it's to be fair to patients and families also.
Would it be more like a single consent requirement? So we're not saying that that the medical board necessarily wants to do the form, but the same elements that would be required for both.
Yes, that the intent of both bills could be fulfilled by a single consent form.
Okay.
I mean, there are enough entities who do the consent forms. We don't need to be involved. That is, every hospital has consent form for everything we have to do. And many physicians' offices follow the similar type of consent. So I think that it's a consent form which includes what it needs to include, which this bill says, is more than enough rather than only thing is single consent form. So Dr. Levine, are you making a motion to support with the amendment?
Yes, support.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded, support with amendments. Any discussion further? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
And there is a comment from Billy Early. Your line is now open.
Hello.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, my name is Billy Early. I'm a physician assistant, healthcare advocate. I'm with the Black Doctors Matter and the American Pain Institute. We represent doctors, physician assistants, and nurse practitioners. I had a comment about the medical board, the opioid discussion that you guys just had, and I believe that one of the major problems is there's a disconnect between the medical board, what they're doing, and these government agencies, like, let's say, the DEA, CDC, and the other agencies that's out there doing enforcement. So with the medical board, with the enforcement part, there's a lot of doctors out there who are avidly training, to undergo pain management professionals, triple pain management doctors who's licensed and things. And these doctors are getting arrested. They're being exploited on television. One of the major reasons because the medical board enforcement has a lot of misconduct going on. The medical board that's appointed, the members, they don't have a lot of education in police matters. And so what this has created is an scapegoat where you have agencies that disconnect with the public and with the doctors, and you guys are the medical board, the people, the staff from the medical board have no idea about police and what they're doing. So you guys are managing a very large police force with no concept, no training in police awareness and misconduct. And your board doesn't show any type of misconduct about policing activities. And this is a serious problem because LAPD, all these CHP, all these police agencies have a lot of misconduct. Their officers are getting, wrote up and stuff. But with you guys' board, they're not getting wrote up. And these police are doing a lot of stuff, tampering with evidence, a lot of stuff, bad stuff to these doctors. And that right there, I believe that the board members need to hire, the governor needs to appoint people on the board that can actually, that's been through this process. You guys, vertical prosecution. Somebody who's been through this will not be the same and so quick as you guys are to state things that you guys are stating. Because for one, they will understand about how the process is and what these doctors are going through. Two, like the gentleman commented about his, somebody died in his family. Obviously.
Please conclude.
And so when you have somebody who actually, patient, doctors take oaths because we care about our patients. We're not God. So people are going to pass, and that's unfortunate. And that's why you have litigation and stuff for that, too, for negligence and stuff. But for the opioids...
Mr. Early, please conclude.
Okay, I'd like to conclude by just saying I would like to take this up on another agenda.
Thank you. Anybody else on the phone?
Next comment comes from Eric Ardenas. Your line is now open.
Go ahead, please.
That's Eric Andrus. Just a quick note. It's very different when you call in to these meetings than being there in person. When you're on the phone, we don't have the green, yellow, and red light. We cannot see how long our time has been. And I could not hear Carrie cutting me off at all. You often don't hear anything on this end, so be aware of that. Carrie, you can sit there and tell me all that I need to sum up all you want, but if I can't hear you, it does no good. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Eric. That's why we want you here rather than be on the phone. Anybody else on the phone?
No further comments from the phone.
Okay. So we have a motion made and seconded. Can we roll call, please?
Dr. Bolot? Aye. Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes?
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, next bill, SB 1163. This bill would expressly state that a post-mortem examination or autopsy on an unidentified body or human remains must only be conducted by an attending physician and surgeon or the chief medical examiner who is a board-certified forensic pathologist certified by the American Board of Pathology. This bill would also require agencies tasked with specified exhumations to perform the exhumation under the direction of a board-certified forensic pathologist. This bill would also make clarifying changes to update existing law. This bill is in line with SB 1189 from 2016, which the board supported. This bill would make it clear that post-mortem examinations or autopsies must be conducted by an attending physician and surgeon or a chief medical examiner, which is appropriate. Board staff suggested that the board take a support position.
Yeah, I'm sure it came out of San Joaquin issue, if I gather, between the sheriff and the medical examiner, the troubles they had. So I strongly recommend that we take support on this one. Any comments from the board? Yes, Brenda.
I have a question. Is this designed to prevent independent examiners?
No.
may be hired by a family from doing this?
I don't think so. When I talked to the author's office on this, they said this bill was really clean up, and that bill from 2016 basically specified, it defined autopsy in law and said that autopsies have to be performed by a physician and surgeon, because we kind of opine that performing autopsies is a practice of medicine, and this bill I think is really just to go in line with that bill, because there was this, this category of unidentified body or human remains, and they're trying to make it consistent with the other bill that passed. I don't think it says that they have to, who they can be hired by. It just has to be a physician and surgeon or the chief medical examiner. So when I talked to the author's office, that didn't seem to be their intent.
So when we say by an attending physician, help me with that. And the bill, would it define an attending physician as a physician? It doesn't have to be that person's physician or a person who had prior knowledge, but just a person who's licensed.
Right. I think the point is just making sure that they're a licensed physician and surgeon.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, an attending physician takes even more further. It's somebody trained compared to a resident physician or someone who is learning. So this means that somebody who was trained to do autopsies, like a pathologist or a forensic pathologist. So that's what it means. Any other comments? Yeah, Dr. Lewis.
There's a lot of history behind this. This is the Benin Amalu issue from San Joaquin County.
Mm-hmm.
So in many counties, the coroner, which is a sheriff, makes the final decision on the outcome of the autopsy. This bill, of what I remember, doesn't take that away, or is the medical examiner the final sayer?
It doesn't really address that. SB 1189 addressed that, but this bill just says who the autopsy can be performed by.
For those specific conditions.
Right.
Okay, any comments from the audience? No, I do need to. Can we have a motion to support?
I move to support.
Okay. Second, I got it. Okay, so any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
We have a comment from Guzine Uzan. Your line is now open.
Go ahead, please.
Guzine, your line is now open.
Go ahead, Gavin. Gavin, your line is now open.
She's on mute.
Okay.
They're on mute.
As he figures out, any other comments on the phone?
There are no additional comments from the phone.
Okay. It looks like the poor guy is lost. Let's go roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat? Aye. Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes?
Mr. Wormuth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. The motion carries. Next.
Okay, next bill, SB 1238. This bill would require a health care provider who creates patient records at the time the initial patient record is created to provide a statement to be signed by the patient or the patient's representative that sets forth the patient's right to inspect his or her medical records, obtain copies of his or her medical records, and provide a written addendum with respect to any item or statement in the records that the patient believes to be incomplete or incorrect. This bill would require the healthcare provider also to notify the patient not fewer than 60 days before the healthcare provider plans to destroy the patient's records. This bill would specify that a healthcare provider that violates this section may be cited and assessed an administrative penalty upon the second each subsequent violation. The board receives many calls and inquiries from consumers regarding medical records and where to find them if a patient retires, moves away, or dies. There is no law requiring a physician to notify patients before destroying their medical records, and there is no law requiring physicians to notify patients of their medical records retention schedule. So requiring this notification will help consumers gain access to their medical records before they are destroyed. This bill will help to ensure that future physicians are well informed in their medical history so they can be provided high-quality medical care. Board staff is suggesting that the board support this bill.
Any comments or questions? Oh, Dr. Bola.
Yeah. This is an interesting situation for a very important administrative function. So small systems or large systems do have laws, I understand, that they must comply with as far as record retention. Am I correct about that?
I mean, not in the general, probably your system does, but in the actual health and safety code where it talks about patients' access to medical records, there's no retention schedule, there's no requirement. If you go to the board's website, I get calls about this all the time from legislative offices. We, on our website, basically say that doctors should, it would be nice to let patients know where to get their medical records, but there's really no law back. I mean, there probably is, like, if it's a Medi-Cal patient, there's some retention laws for there, but general code sections, there's not.
So
laws.
CMS and Medi-Cal define, right? For an adult, 7 years, and for children, it's age plus 21 plus, there's some little thing there, and some people that have congenital syndromes, it may be lifelong. So the concern here is that as a physician, and I'm very busy, I know that our information management systems oversees hundreds of thousands of documents, so that patients ought to know, no doubt, that their records may not be available lifelong, and that a process in place to tell your patients you should always, as you transfer, obtain a copy and maintain them. So I'm not convinced that I would want to provide, I don't want to say I would really hate to have to be responsible for all my patients' records personally and then say, Dr. Bola, your patient didn't get her records, and I'm working in a big health system, right? That's my concern about the way this bill's written.
Well, I think just like the retention schedule now is for CMS, like you said, in your health system, make sure that those requirements are met. If this was a requirement in law, probably that there would be a way for them to make sure that this requirement is met. The problem is if you're not if you don't fall under CMS, or like you said, one of those, there's nothing really to protect you. So your doctor could move away, they could retire, and you don't really have, as a patient, you don't really have any authority to get those records, even though we say, hey, this would be a good thing for you to do, physicians. There's nothing in law. So this is kind of protecting those patients that aren't protected by the other CMS and other rules.
Well, that's the same concern I have. I have also, Jennifer, is that I work at a county hospital. I have no control of what is in the information system. It is the hospital which controls. I don't have a separate practice. So why am I being responsible for if they mess up, quote unquote? I have zero control on the medical records other than what I enter. That's about it. So that's why I'm just a little worried that we're dumping all the stuff onto physicians when the health systems are the ones many times nowadays control the medical record rather than, it's totally different if you're in a small town or a private practice, yes, you have control of your record, but in large health systems, doctors don't have control.
But I believe that, just to bring up a point, I believe that CMS has requirements now on doctors that you have to retain them for a certain amount. So I don't know if the healthcare systems are making sure that those requirements are met. This would be kind of the same thing, because I know there is some requirements existing law if you fall under different categories, but there's just not a general requirement for if you don't fall under one of those categories. So.
Yeah, Dr. Levine, Dr. Cross, and then Dr. Hawkins.
So there is in here an exemption for a provider who works in a system with an electronic health record in which the records are kept in perpetuity.
Right.
And I believe that would address the issue that Dr. Bolat and Dr. Gananadev are referring to, because now electronic health records are kept in perpetuity.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Dr. Levine.
I started out as a solo practitioner and accumulated lots of paper charts and paid a lot for their storage. And other than CMS requirements, I always relied upon my malpractice company to advise me as to how long records should be kept, which were similar, 7 years, or for a pediatric patient, age 18 plus 7 years. all of my old paper charts have now been electronically scanned, and I'm working on an electronic health record system. So this doesn't represent a burden to me. But there are lots of physicians, and probably older solo practice physicians, who will have enormous costs to meet the requirements of this law. And I'm wondering how those costs are to be covered. Do they become the responsibility of the physician to pay tens of thousands of dollars a year to come into compliance and maintain compliance?
So the bill doesn't require them to keep them for a certain amount of time. It just requires them to notify the patient of their retention schedule. So if you as a physician will be able to say, this is my retention schedule, and notify the patient of that. So it's not requiring you to keep them for 7 years or that. It's just saying you have to let patients know how long you're going to keep them and then notify them before you destroy them.
Dr. Hawkins, then Dr. Yip. Yeah.
So my comment doesn't speak directly to the bill, but I think everyone at the table would probably agree that increasingly we've advised patients to know more about their history, their family history, to be a steward of their own records. So we recognize it's important for clients, patients to actually have control of their information, and that's the only comment.
Dr. Yip.
In reality, I've been practicing 30 years. I always give copies of lab and imaging to the patient. And my experience is that most of the people who want record would ask within the first 2 or 3 years. So I have 3 storage house, thousands of records. If this law say I have to notify them, means in 10 years block, I have to mail maybe like 3,000-4,000 letters to patient that I'm going to take away your charge. That put a lot of burden on the staff and the physician practice. It's just not practical. Maybe once the last 10 years, I have someone ask record that has been like 7 years ago. So we're doing a lot of work to prevent one record. It just doesn't. Thank you.
Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of discussions and confusion, and I'm wondering if this is too early to say support, and we have suggestions, and maybe we just wait. And but I know there's some cycle coming up. What happens if we just go back with either?
Nothing happens if we don't take a position. Nothing happens. Right. It's just we don't take a position. So that's an option too, not to take a position. So
let me ask you: are there anybody else working with the author to really clean up, quote unquote?
I mean, it's kind of early in the process. That's the hard part. I was just going to go check and see if there's anyone in support or opposition yet.
I mean, nowadays, especially large systems have patient portal. Why do you need to inform? Yeah. They have all the info, and they can actually download their entire medical record. That's what patient portal is.
It's called MyChart in a lot of.
All I can say is the board does receive a lot of calls from consumers on this issue.
So. No, I get that. Ms. Sutton-Wills.
You know, from a patient's standpoint, I think that this is something definitely worthy of supporting. From a patient standpoint, I've seen MyChart. I use MyChart. It's not as easy to access, and the notifications do require a certain amount of tethering to electronic services, and it's not for everybody to rely on MyChart and to exchange the burden to patients to rely on MyChart, where everybody isn't a digital native, doesn't seem appropriate from a patient standpoint too. I think that in some version or another, this should be supported.
Ms. Ross.
I would agree with Ms. Sutton-Wills as well, and just say that this does not require that you actually reach the patient. This requires a simple notification to their last known physical address and their last known email address. And if that email goes unanswered after 60 days, there's no requirement that those records be retained, any further. So, I mean, frankly, I think it's probably already a condition of most of the malpractice insurance that covers, all of physicians, and it's probably a requirement of other folks. This seems to me to be, quite reasonable and makes clear that the standard applies for all.
Dr. Bollard.
I think and I agree that patients need to have access, and I think we're doing different things. And to my members to my right, I do agree that everybody's not a digital native. Again, I'm just going to voice my concern. We are asking our doctors to take responsibility for administrative functions, and I think that one approach might be that patients do need to be advised that your records are not necessarily going to be retained in perpetuity if you're not a member of a big health system, and that we should be coming up with best practices and maybe alerting people and putting that as a board and making that an important point and spreading that information out to our consumers. And again, I do worry about that I can see it in my own health system. People ask for a record request, and it takes time. And to find these records, we all pay lots of money to the Iron Mountains of the world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But how we can try to eliminate the calls to the board, because I'm perplexed as to why the board's getting the phone calls because they can't find the doctor, I take it, and the doctor's retired. Right. So that when the doctor retires, then when there's an elimination of records, and if I haven't seen the patient for 25 years, I'm just curious. I do agree that this needs work. I think it's an important and essential point of view that's being brought up, but I think summary documents are almost more important than 10,000 pages of things that you possibly can't even read. So I think this needs some more work, in my opinion.
Dr. Krause, but before that, one option could be, rather than just a physician, as physicians don't control a lot of medical records nowadays anymore, a health system or physician might help, because Kaiser Permanente is a health system, so is County of San Bernardino, so is UC system. It is the burden on the system which keeps these records, rather than an individual doctor who might be there 1 year and gone, or 2 years are gone. I mean, this is not like what it was to practice medicine once upon a time. So that might be one amendment we could ask for, rather than just put it all on the doctor.
Well, just a reminder too, like Dr. Levine said, this doesn't apply to electronic health records. So many of these systems probably have electronic health records.
So it applies only to paper?
And that's so long as the records are kept in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Which maybe they all do, but there may be some limitation on that.
Yeah.
Dr. Cross.
I would like to move a neutral position, because I see that there are lots of costs that will be placed on solo small practice physicians. The good news and bad news is that there are other organizations that protect the economic interests of physicians. We don't have to worry about that. But I think we're better with a neutral position than oppose or support, because I don't see that supporting this or opposing this is really an important statement coming from the medical board. So I would move neutral.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. So if you want to go anywhere else, we have to vote on this motion first.
I have a substitute motion.
I'm sorry?
I have a substitute motion to support with him.
No, it's unless it is an amendment to the motion. Otherwise, you got to vote it down and go to the next motion.
Right.
The motion's appropriate, and all motions are appropriate before there's a vote. And so I'm putting my motion on the table prior to the vote.
Microphone.
Robert's rules. We follow Robert's rules.
Couldn't hear you.
I said that all motions are appropriate prior to the vote. And I'm putting my motion on the table prior to the vote.
Yeah, Carrie, can I have a legal opinion if you have?
I think that's true if Dr. Krause accepts it as a friendly amendment and substitutes it.
But he doesn't have to accept it.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I think, you vote on the first motion that's been made and seconded,
my
and if it
understanding
doesn't
is.
succeed, the next motion can be voted on.
The next motion needs to be heard.
So my thing is, vote this down, Ms. Sutton-Wills, if you strongly feel about next motion, and we'll take the next motion on.
If I may arbitrate, once there is a motion on the floor, there is an opportunity for discussion. And that discussion could include the opportunity for a different motion. The good news is that we're not in a circumstance here where if the motion fails, that there isn't an opportunity for another motion, but certainly all alternative motions should be included in the discussion of this motion without having to make the motion.
Okay, so discussion. Brenda, you want to discuss? You want to say why you want to go to oppose this motion? You can state your motion when you're opposing it, but that won't be taken till this motion is voted down.
My suggestion is that where people who have spoken to this have spoken about very clear deficiencies in the proposed bill, we should take the minor amount of time to make specific suggestions to those changes rather than be neutral on something that for patients is very important and feels very vital. I understand that often we operate in consensus, but I also understand, looking at this from a patient's point of view, that this...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but once you turn your face that way,
Sure. That from a patient's point of view, that this is unusually important.
Okay, so I'm gathering that if this motion fails, you would look at a motion support if amended. Is that what I'm gathering? Thank you. Anything else? Any other discussion? Yeah, Kim. Yeah, okay.
I was just going to say, I think if there are amendments that the board wants, or even with a neutral position, we can still walk those in and discuss them if there are things that you as a board support those amendments to the bill. So that might be something you want to hear, because even with a neutral position, we can still work with the author.
We can take a neutral if amended position,
right, a neutral if amended.
But I'm not totally clear on what the amendments are,
right,
so we would need to...
That's what we would need to identify. What are those amendments so we could walk them in? So...
Okay. Mr. Warma.
I was just coming to the aid of Ms. Sutton-Wills that procedurally, under Robert's rules, a motion can be amended, and if it is amended and that amendment is seconded, then we have to first deal with the amendment, and then, depending on the way that amendment goes, then go back to the original motion.
Thank you. Anything else?
I think, comment.
Dr. Yip.
I think either neutral support, I think the message I'd like to pass on to the people who work on the bill is that 10 years is quite a bit to go back. I don't mind going forward as long as they say certain day, or even backward 2 or 3 years. Like in prior practice, we have almost every week health plan audit, 50 charts, 80 charts. I actually have 2 full-time staff working on it. Take away the time that I can call patient, talk to them, talk to family, real patient care. That's reality. But I think it's a good idea the patient would notify your record being like trash or removed. But I think the reality is that moving forward is fine. We can prepare for that. If you say the bill say moving forward we have to tell the patient we're going to take away your record, I would give my record to the patient every time they come in to see me, so they don't come back to see me. But if they say move backward, maybe 2 or 3 years, rather than like 7 years, 10 years, that's involve thousands of labor there.
So the way I read the bill and just the way I read the first section, it is that it would be any new patient that you have, that's where the notification goes to.
Right, because it doesn't say, in bills, usually it says to be able to go backwards in time, it would actually have to state that in the
So
bill.
the bill would go from
yeah.
effective date forward, so it's any new patient you would have if this went in after January 1st of 2019. The only thing is the notification for the individual at the 60 days. So all of those records you have, if you were going to purge any of those, Dr. Yip, you would have to notify those patients. So this is a point in time forward for the notification for patient records that you're creating. And then any of them that you're purging, you would have to go back and notify them before you get rid of them.
And like Ms. Lawson said, you only have to make a couple attempts. You don't have to actually get in touch with those people. If you can't get a hold of them after you try a couple different ways, then you've done your due diligence.
I guess my comment is I worry that in this discussion we're actually, I mean, we truly are, what I would call over lawyering it, right? We're focusing in on some crazy problem that might occur. And I don't know how often you all destroy your records or retire or move on from practicing to another place, but this is a one-time event that if you're going to destroy these records, then a notification needs to go out. And presumably they're at that time that you're destroying them, unless you have put in place a records retention and destruction policy like a lot of the public agencies have in place. I don't know. I mean, maybe you are destroying records every day and you're going to need another full-time person to handle it, but I suspect that's not really the case.
If you destroy records every day, you're in deep trouble because you don't even have something when the patient comes back to you. And just let me give you my perspective. I'm okay with either neutral if amended or support if amended because it has some value, but it has some issues too. So you need to make sure that the issues are cleared up. And each time I hear something else, it's making more and more towards support if I'm amended, but that's my personal opinion. So.
Dr. Gonadev, I do want to clarify that the board hasn't ever officially adopted Robert's rules, and so I'm reacting to the typical practice. The board's free to adopt Robert's rules formally. So I did.
I did hear Ms. Sutton-Will's motion, so we know what it is coming if this doesn't go anywhere. So we're okay. Any public comment? Oh, Julie.
Good morning. Julie D'Angelo Falmouth from the Center for Public Interest Law. I support this bill. I agree with Ms. Sutton-Wells and Ms. Lawson. This bill is attempting to fill a huge hole in the law right now that confuses patients, that doesn't exist for patients. And as evidence of that, Ms. Simoes has said you get lots and lots of calls from patients about record retention, record destruction. I think it's incumbent on this board to support this bill if it is amended to resolve some of the problems you have. There's exemptions in the bill already for electronic health records if those are maintained in perpetuity. There's exemptions for psychiatrists. There's a provision that allows physicians to charge patients a nominal fee for records if they're required to produce them. I think that you should, if you really get this number of calls and concerns from patients about records retention, you should figure out a way to make this bill work. And I listened to your public information officer yesterday saying that he's interested in creating podcasts and webcasts on certain issues. This is a perfect one to start with. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Megan Allred on behalf of the California Medical Association. CMA requests that the board not take a support position on this bill until the author takes amendments to address the operational and privacy concerns with the bill. We're working with the author to ensure that patients are notified of retention periods for medical records. However, the bill in print contains redundant notifications already addressed by federal and state patient access laws. It also requires notice many years after patients have been seen, which creates a large administrative burden that takes away from a physician's ability to care for their patients and risks private information falling into the wrong hands as notifications are sent out to the last known addresses increasing risks of a privacy breach. CMA continues to work with the author to address these concerns, and we just would ask that you would hold off on the support just yet.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Oh, yes. Dr. Levine.
Just a point of clarification or point of information. What happens upon the death of a physician? Solo practice has a records retention policy. Does the bill address that?
This bill does not address that. What we tell individuals that usually contact the board, it's the executor of that individual's will, and we encourage them to contact all the patients and let them know that they have the medical records and then they can get them or that they're going to be destroyed. Sometimes with the death of a physician, another physician will actually purchase the practice, and so then the records are still there. But that's what we encourage physicians to do, because again, going back to what Jennifer said, there's no clear-cut law on medical records.
Another issue we just heard, okay. As we know, the concept is not a bad idea. It's just, it needs a lot of cleanup. I mean, patients should have a right to, and they should have something there. So anyway, any other comments from audience? If not, comments on the phone?
We have a question from Eric Andrist. Your line is now open.
Go ahead,
just
Mr.
my
Andrus.
standard disclaimer that the CMA is only interested in protecting doctors, and your duty is to protect patients. And also, too, I'm going to be looking up this issue about the Roberts Rules of Orders, because Carrie Webb has been wrong on procedural issues before. So I'll let you know.
Thank you, Mr. Andrist. Any other comments on the phone?
No additional comments on the phone.
Okay, so I'm giving the final chance to the makers of the motion, because we didn't adopt Robert's rules means that we can do whatever we want. Do you want your motion to continue, the maker and the second, or you want to modify? Dr. Cross.
The discussion convinces me that there's a significant contingent of the board that wishes to support this with amendment. And I'm happy to withdraw my motion.
Okay. And one other option we have is support the concept, because we don't know all the amendments, what we want. It's the concept we agree, so that's another option for us to take. So with that, would anybody like to make a motion? Yes, ma'am.
I would move to support the concept and work with the authors to create something that protects patient records.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Dr. Yip. So, okay, so we got a motion made and seconded. Support the concept and work with the author to come up with the amendments. Okay. Any further discussion? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolott?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. The motion carries. It's so good
Dr.
not to have
Kraus.
Robert's rules, so we can do it.
Okay, the next two are easy.
Go ahead. Next one.
Okay, SB 1336 would amend the End-of-Life Option Act and require the attending physician to request that the qualified individual inform the physician orally or in writing as to the motivating reason or reasons behind the individual's decision to request the aid in dying drug. It specifies what the question has to include, and that's in your analysis. And it would also add to the information collected by CDPH and reported by CDPH. It would also require CDPH to report all the information that's filled out on the form. It would require the board to make the changes to the form. We wouldn't have to do regs because the actual changes are in the bill. It would include more information in the annual report published by Department of Public Health, and more information may give a better picture on how the act is working in California. Board staff is suggesting the board take a neutral position on this bill.
Okay. Any comments? Can we have a motion to take neutral?
I move to take a
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolott?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Wormuth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. The motion carries. Next one.
Last bill, SB 14.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay.
SB 1495. This is just a technical and clarifying changes to SB 512 from last year. So as you remember, SB 512 was regarding non-FDA approved stem cell therapies and required a notice for providers who provided these therapies. The board took a neutral position on that bill. This bill was kind of brought up after that bill passed of some clarifying changes that were needed, and it would specify that stem cell therapies that require a notice do not include therapies that meet the criteria of the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21, Sections 1271.10 and 1271.15, which are those that do not require FDA pre-market review or clearance but are still regulated by the FDA, or those that qualify for an exception. And the bill also contains other technical cleanup not related to this board. We took a neutral position on SB 512, so the board staff is suggesting that we also take a neutral position on this bill. And it's been worked out by all the interested parties in the author's office.
Okay, whatever you said was Greek and Latin to me, but any
It's very
comments?
technical.
Any comments? Okay, can we have a motion to take neutral?
I move to take a neutral position on SB 1495.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded. Any further comments? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolott?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Wormuth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, the motion carries. Thank you, Jennifer.
Just
Truly
have that
appreciate it.
110B left, right? No?
Go for it.
10B is the status of regulatory actions.
yeah, we still
It's
have
under
you
tab
here.
10 in your board packets. I just am here to answer any questions that members may have on the matrix.
Okay. Any questions from the from the members on 10B? Any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Okay, we'll go to agenda item 21. We're all going to skip here and there and come back. So where is that?
Morning.
Okay.
Appreciate you taking me out of order so I can get home today. The last Midwifery Advisory Council meeting was held March 1st. The MAC voted to recommend reappointment of Barbara Yaroslavsky to the public member position of the MAC and to appoint Claudia Bralia, licensed midwife, to the vacancy that's created by my retirement. All of you, I'm sure, are aware of Ms. Yaroslavsky's strengths, so I'm not going to go into them today. But you may be less aware of Ms. Bralia. She's been active in midwifery in the state for many, many years, and she is currently the director of the only California school that's approved by the board for licensed midwives. She brings a wealth of knowledge to the Midwifery Advisory Council, as well as a proven ability to get things done. So I'm really happy that she's applied and the MAC is recommending her. The other thing that we've finally gotten worked out is the licensed midwife annual report task force, through several years of work, has completed those recommendations, and Ms. Almeida and myself will be giving you a update on what that looks like in a minute. This is my last meeting as chair of the Midwifery Advisory Council. I've really, really enjoyed my tenure on the MAC and very much appreciate the support that has grown over the last 10 years from this body. Thank you so much. I need a motion to approve the following agenda items for the August Midwifery Advisory Council meeting. Update on revisions to the Licensed Midwife Annual Report. Update on the Midwifery Task Force, including, if relevant, an update on regulatory efforts pursuant to AB 1308. Outreach opportunities on the hospital transfer form. Update on midwifery-related legislation. A selection of a vice chair for the Midwifery Advisory Council, discussion and possible adoption of term limits for members of the MAC, the report from the chair, and an update on the midwifery program.
You're asking for a lot, Carrie, so can we have
I thought it was a short list.
Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, Dr. Levine, motion made.
Second.
Second. Any comments from the board? Dr. Levine.
Just a thank you to you, Carrie, for your attendance and your vigilance, and it's been a pleasure having you at these meetings.
Thank you.
Ms. Sutton-Wales.
Thank you for being here. As a public member who doesn't have information and background here, I look forward to your comments and the information that you provide, the education that you give us. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Dr. Cross.
Your collaboration has indeed been a great pleasure. I have learned a lot about midwifery that I did not know before. For you, I know it's been a labor of love, and I'd like to thank you for having delivered for the board.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nobody else has, so it will be my comment, Carrie. So thank you so much, and I still recall when I first came on the board, I said, what is this profession? That's what my thought was, and we went through a lot, and you helped us to understand what you guys do. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, so any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There is a comment from Eric Andrus. Your line is now open.
Mr. Andrus, go.
This is one perk of being able to call in from home. In your very own board member manual on page 4, under Meeting Rules Board Policy, it states, the board will use Robert's Rules of Orders to the extent that it does not conflict with state law, e.g. Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, as a guide when conducting its meeting. So you were wrong, Carrie.
Thank you, Eric. Any other comments?
No further comments from the phone.
Okay, so roll call, please.
Aye. Dr. Hawkins? Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes?
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, the motion carries. Okay, the next agenda item is 22, discussion and possible action on the Midwifery Advisory Council appointment set for expiration on June 30, 2008. Ms. Alameda and Mr. Esperwan. Yeah.
Good morning. At the December 7th, 2017 MAC meeting, the MAC recommended to appoint Ms. Bregley for the LM vacancy and to reappoint actually Barbara Yaroslavsky for the public vacancy. So I just need a motion. Do we need to do separate motions for each individual, or can it be combined? Carrie, I'm sorry.
I would do them separately.
Okay. So if I can have a motion to approve Ms. Bregley.
Okay, so can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay. All right, so any comments from the board? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat?
Aye.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis? Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes?
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, the motion carries. Next.
A motion to approve Mrs. Yaroslawski for the vacant public position?
So moved.
That we did, didn't we, last time?
No, this is a reappointment.
Okay. Oh, already. Okay. Second. Okay, so we got a motion made and seconded. Anyone else has a... Okay. Any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolott?
Aye.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes?
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, the motion carries. Please convey our regards to Barbara. I haven't seen her since got off the board, so. Okay, next one.
Do that.
That's it?
Yes, we're moving on to item, okay, 23. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
So agenda item number 23, this is regarding the licensed midwife annual report. Pursuant to Business and Profession Code Section 2516, a licensed midwife who assists or supervises a childbirth that occurs in an out-of-hospital setting must report to the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development by March 30th of each calendar year specific data elements. OSPED is required to maintain the confidentiality of the licensed midwife and report only aggregate information to the board. Assembly Bill 1308 amended Business and Profession Code Section 2516 to allow the board, along with input from the Midwifery Advisory Committee, to revise the data collected to better fit the needs of the midwifery community. A task force was created to review the current reporting requirements and to work with board staff, the midwifery community, and other interested parties to determine the data elements needed to revise the LMAR reporting tool. Board staff has created a new form to incorporate the proposed changes to the current version of the LMAR. A copy is enclosed in your board packet. This new form is consistent with Business and Profession Code Section 2516 and continues to include all data elements outlined in law. The proposed changes add additional information regarding vaginal birth after C-section and collects info on maternal, fetal, and infant death in a better manner. The document you are looking at is the paper format. However, most midwives will do this electronically. In the electronic format, the system will assist the midwife through the questionnaire based upon the way they answer the question. This new form is going to capture more information and be able to relate the information based upon what happens per birth. With this new format, it will capture outcomes in a manner that will be useful in gathering information regarding midwives, which will assist both the midwifery community, the public, and the policy makers. There was a lot of work put into this form, and I would like to thank the LMAR Task Force, members, and board staff for their assistance with this project. Ms. Barravon and I are here to answer any questions and would like to ask for a motion to approve the changes to the LMAR, authorize staff to make any non-substantive changes, and direct staff to update the data system and work with OSPED to begin the new data reporting for the 2018 reporting period.
A long one. Can we have a motion to approve? Okay. Second. Do we have a second? Okay. Any discussion from the board? Discussion from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolott?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Abstain.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye. Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, the motion carries. April, hang in there. We'll go to item 11.
Oh, okay. So item 11, we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Yeah.
I'm going to miss her. Okay, Mercy in Action College of Midwifery applied to the board to be recognized as a midwifery program. Midwifery educational programs must meet the requirements of Business and Profession Code Section 2512.5 and 2513 and California Code of Regulations Section 1379.30. A program that is seeking recognition must provide a 3-year post-secondary midwifery education program accredited by a board-approved accrediting agency recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, provide didactic and clinical education on all subjects outlined in statute and regulations, and clinical education must be verified by a licensed midwife, certified nurse midwife, or physician and surgeon. The Midwifery Education Accreditation Council is an independent, nonprofit organization recognized by the U.S. Department of Education as an accreditation agency of direct entry midwifery programs and approved by the board. Mercy in Action is a nonprofit educational institute accredited by the Midwifery Education Accreditation Council on March 9th, 2017 for 5 years. Mercy in Action provides a 3-year midwifery education program with a curriculum that meets board statute and regulations. Board staff conducted a review of the documentation submitted by Mercy in Action and determined that it meets the requirements outlined in law to be recognized as a midwifery program. I would like a motion to approve Mercy in Action as a midwifery program.
Okay, so can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Got a motion? Second. We got a motion made and seconded. Any comments from the board? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Okay, so roll call, please.
Dr. Bolot?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. The motion carries. Next one.
Okay, agenda item number 12. This is another midwifery program. This is National Midwifery Institute that applied to be a recognized midwifery challenge program. Again, it also has to comply with all of the statutes and laws. The board approved National Midwifery Institute's challenge program in February 2006. We have also approved their 3-year midwifery educational program in September of 2002. Effective January 1st, 2015, the law was amended to indicate that new licensees shall not substitute clinical experience for formal didactic education. Prior to the change in law, the board contacted National Midwifery Institute and requested documentation to verify if their existing program complied with the new law. In March 2017, National Midwifery Institute provided the board with an updated curriculum, a new method to evaluate students' prior education, and a detailed report outlining the process for applicants to document and demonstrate their eligibility to participate in their challenge examination. Board staff conducted a review of the documentation submitted and determined that it meets the requirements outlined in law to be recognized at a midwifery challenge program. I would like a motion to approve the program.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any comments? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments from the phone.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolot?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. Motion carries. Next one.
Agenda item 13. This is American Medical Certification Association. They applied to the board to be an approved medical assistant certifying agency. California Code of Regulations, Section 1366.31 states in part that an organization that certifies medical assistants may apply to the board for approval. Approval is subject to the certifying agency being able to demonstrate compliance with the requirements outlined in law. The American Medical Certification Association is a nonprofit, tax-exempt organization established in 2010 and was granted accreditation by the Institute for Credentialing Excellence to offer medical assistant certifying examinations to candidates on October 8, 2015. Board staff conducted a review of the documentation submitted by American Medical Certification Association and determined that it meets the regulatory requirements to be approved. I would like a motion to approve the Medical Assistant Certifying Agency American Medical Certification Association.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Dr. Yip.
Just a feedback that the training actually required quite a bit of time in the phlebotomy, like drawing blood. To me, a lot of MA probably do not draw blood in the office. Maybe 1 out of your 5 would do that, but the amount of time, and I think there's another separate program for people certified in phlebotomy. So,
Yeah,
just
they
a
do have
feedback,
another program for that.
It seems to me like an over-investment in time to train that for someone. He or she may not use it as a medical assistant. But
A medical assistant can draw blood as long as they have the additional training that's outlined in the regulations, and I believe Ms. Webb's looking those right now.
Okay,
It's only 10 hours of training that are required by regulations plus 10 demonstrations.
right, like page 23, it seems that they invest like 25% of the time for that. I mean, no big deal. I'm just bringing it up. In reality, that's.
I mean, a lot of offices do use their medical assistants to draw blood. I know mine does.
Well, I agree. I'm just saying that maybe 1 over 3, 1 over 5, not everybody will draw blood. I just think for the future they should invest time in training something else rather than that. So
yeah, it's like medical school. We do 4 years of what, and what we practice is different. So, any other comments? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Okay. We need a motion? I mean, we have the motion made second. Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Bolot?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
And Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, the motion carries. Thank you, April. We'll go to, I'm trying to flip these pages, 14, right, Kim?
14.
We'll go to item number 14, discussion and possible action and recommendations from the Specialty Faculty Permit Committee. Dr. Bolot.
Yes, good morning. I'm going to go through our agenda item 14. The Special Faculty Permit Review Committee held a teleconference meeting on March 8th, 2018. And at that meeting, the committee reviewed and discussed Dr. Bertina's application for a special faculty appointment with Stanford University School of Medicine. And that, again, that's in board packet 14.1 and 2. Dr. Bertina specializes in the area of pediatrics, specifically in the area of hematology, oncology, and stem cell transplantation. Her clinical research goal is to overcome the barriers surrounding hematopoietic stem cell transplantation and apply current scientific knowledge to improve the outcome of the hematopoietic stem cell transplantation in children with cancer and untreatable genetic disorders. Dr. Bertina has held the position of Associate Professor of Pediatrics in the Division of Pediatric Stem Cell Transplantation and Regenerative Medicine at Stanford University School of Medicine since September 2017. The university recruitment efforts for this position were conducted both nationally and internationally, and it was unanimously selected, Dr. Bertina was unanimously selected based on her clinical expertise in the area of stem cell transplantation, cell and gene therapy, and quality translational research experience. Dr. Bertina has achieved distinction in pediatrics with expertise in the field of T-cell depleted hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, currently performed in only a few centers worldwide. Stockter was head of the Pediatric Stem Cell Transplant Unit in the Department of Hematology and Oncology at Bambino Gesù Children's Hospital in Rome, and that was back in October 2013. Dr. Bertina was responsible for enabling this institution to have the largest number of children transplanted with hematopoietic progenitor stem cells in Europe. Dr. Bertina has many accomplishments in her career and has demonstrated that her extensive knowledge and experience meets the needs of Stanford University School of Medicine. And if approved by the board, Dr. Bertina will hold a full-time faculty appointment as an associate professor of pediatrics at the university. Dr. Bertana will provide clinical care to children with the treatment of malignant and non-malignant diseases, focus on the management of pediatric patients receiving haploidentical stem cell transplantation, and provide inpatient consultation to stem cell transplantation unit at the Lucille Packard Children's Hospital. Dr. Bertana will also continue her research on immune recovery of mRNA. Stanford University School of Medicine has demonstrated that Dr. Bertana is academically eminent to hold a full-time professor clinical faculty appointment at the university, and there is great need for her expertise in her field of medicine. The committee has reviewed Dr. Bertana's application and qualification and recommends to this board to approve Dr. Bertana for a special faculty permit appointment. And please, if there's any questions, myself and Ms. Sutton-Wills were both present for the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Bollard. If you actually made it even shorter, would have approved anyway. So, can I have a motion to approve? We have
Second.
I think I needed to make the motion. Did I?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
either.
shall I do it?
Yep.
In other words, that the board approve this, Dr. Bertana for a business and code section 21681A1B of the special faculty permit appointment. So a motion was made for that.
Okay, and it's seconded already. So, any comments from the board? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Bolat?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Lawson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine? Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Pines?
Aye.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Wormuth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye, the motion carries. Now we jump to item 24. Executive management reports. Ms. Kirschmeyer, can we make it quick, Ms. Kirschmeyer?
I will make it as quick as I can. All right. Just like to draw the members' attention to agenda item 24. There are just a few items I'd like to bring to the board's attention. As stated at the last meeting, the board is still unable to obtain any detailed budget documents due to the Department of Consumer Affairs switching over to a new accounting database. We are uncertain as to when these reports will be received. Until those reports are received, we are unable to provide any information on the board's expenditures for fiscal year 17-18. As we approach the end of the fiscal year, we are hopeful that the department will be able to provide reports soon so we can let the members know where we are with spending for the fiscal year. In your packet is the most up-to-date fund condition, though, which does indicate that the board will be at 5.4 months reserve at the end of this fiscal year. However, the board, even with the general fund loan being repaid this year, is projected to be at 1.7 months at the end of fiscal year 19-20. At prior meetings, I have been reporting that the board may need to move the offices in Sacramento. We are still in negotiations with the landlords and are still awaiting information from the Department of General Services and the Department of Consumer Affairs on the status of our relocation. We will let the board know as soon as we have a definite answer on whether we will need to move or if we are able to stay. But at this point, it does look like we're probably going to be staying. I'd like to bring the members' attention to a new report in the statistics. It can be found on page BRD 24B13. At the last meeting, the members wanted to see investigation timeframes based upon the type of investigation. And so this chart actually has provided that each case type broken down for the last 3 fiscal years. And as you can see, and I think this is something that Ms. Nichols has brought to the board's attention too, is that those inappropriate prescribing cases take the longest to process. Speaking of prescribing, regarding cures, there are 2 things I would like to bring to the board's attention. The first is that the Department of Justice has been working on the implementation of AB 40, which, as you may remember, requires the department to integrate cures with health systems' electronic records. So the Department of Justice is working on the architectural diagram to make this work. The law does require the integration to be available for those systems in October, and I believe they will make that deadline. The second issue related to cures is to let the members know that on April 2nd, 2018, the Department of Justice certified the cures system for use. which means that the mandated requirement to consult cures will begin on October 2nd, 2018. So for our physician members, that's really important. The board is working on a new website, and actually we've finalized it. We've run it through the California Department of Public Health, Department of Justice, and the Department of Consumer Affairs, who've also looked at it, and everybody, I believe, will be linking to our website or using our website as the template. Our staff is also working on a flyer that can be provided to prescribers. On pages BRD 24D1 and 2, until we get that flyer completed, there's actually a handout that we have been providing which outlines the requirements on law, and you can provide that to your health systems until we get the flyer out, which I'll send out to everyone so they can get it out. We will also be working with individuals and organizations that we've built partnerships with to get the information out as well, and then we'll do an outreach campaign with with Carlos's group. I would like to personally thank Jennifer Meyer at the board, who has been working extremely hard to get this web page and flyer done. And Jennifer is actually our new graphic design individual that we hired in our information systems branch. She's the one that told us our seal was outdated, and so we came up with our new logo, which everybody has been able to see. And she's done a lot of looking at all of our documents, as Ms. Pines and those guys keep running things past her to say, Kim, you guys got to get into the next century. So we are trying to do our best, and you know, sometimes it's hard for me for change, so she's been pulling me around slowly. But our website, I think when you see the link to the new Cures page, it totally has a new look and feel of like what new website you'd look like today, what it should look like. Based upon the recent statistics received from Cures, there are 94,658 physicians who are registered in Cures. In addition, physicians requested about almost 314,000 patient activity reports just in the month of March. Next Monday, I will attend the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee meeting at the Department of Consumer Affairs. This committee is made up of the executive officer of every Healing Arts Board, a designee of the Department of Healthcare Services, and the director of the department. In 2011, this committee adopted all the current uniform standards. However, a recent bill required the committee to look at uniform standard number 4. Therefore, the meeting next week will begin discussions on Uniform Standard 4 and whether any changes are needed. Uniform Standard 4 establishes requirements for biological fluid testing. And any changes that will actually occur to the uniform standards are going to impact the regulations on the Physician Health and Wellness Program. And I was supposed to give an update yesterday on the Physician Health and Wellness Program, but just so you know, those regulations have been submitted to the Department of Consumer Affairs, so at this point it'll be going through their review, and that takes anywhere from about 6 months to a year to get through the process so we can notice the Office of Administrative Law. So that's what we're looking at right now, and that's where the status of those are. But during this process, if anything changes in those uniform standards, we're going to have to go back and look at the regulations and make any changes to them. So we might be giving them information as it goes along that review process. And then finally, next week is the Federation of State Medical Board's annual meeting. Although we are not able to travel to North Carolina, we are able to attend the House of Delegates meeting via teleconference. While this doesn't allow the board to obtain the valuable information that is obtained from being at the meeting, it does allow the board to weigh in on the policy development for the Federation. Under Agenda Item 24E is a copy of the draft agenda for the meeting. And just to let everyone know, there will be an opportunity if you want to get up at 5 in the morning to watch their opening service sessions that are going to happen on Thursday. So I'll send that link out to the members in case you want to go watch that. And with that, that concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Kim. Any questions? Yeah, Dr. Cross.
Kim, thank you so much. I lament that we are not able to participate in the FSMB meeting. I think it's a very valuable organization, and we gain a lot from collaborating with medical board members and officers from around the nation. The reason we're not able to attend is because we have a ban on state-funded or supported travel to North Carolina because of their bathroom law. And although that was modified last year, it wasn't modified to our state's satisfaction. I'm doubly concerned that we won't be able to travel to Texas next year for the FSMB meeting because our ban on state-funded travel to other states in the United States has been expanded by Attorney General Becerra now to 8 states. I have heard that we're going to build a wall on California's border and that President Trump will pay for it. But I think it is a loss for the people of California to have these circumstances where not just our board, but all boards are unable to participate on the national level. And Kim and Dr. Ganadev, I would encourage you to communicate with all that you can to let the executive branches and the legislative branches know that we may not be adequately serving the people of California to ban travel. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Ms. Sutton-Wills, then Dr. Yip.
To the extent that there would be some balance, I support the courage of the legislature to step forward for equality and to limit travel as appropriate in supporting the state of California in supporting other states' equality. Thank you.
Dr. Yip.
I'd like Kim, if next time the meeting with the curious stakeholder, that my experience, what I'm doing in the hospital, I'm on staff, actually encourage, if not require, the hospital administration, particularly ER department, for every patient admitted, run a curious report and be part of the medication reconciliation, because most of the, or not most, at least good part of the pain medication is journey from the hospital. Instead of having physician go to the computer in the hospital trying to look it up, particularly now it's going to be required that the hospital can do that as part of the medication reconciliation. When you look at the patient medical record, right there you can see it. Particularly now the hospital already trying to make a record. So IT department in our hospital actually working on it. So.
That should be available by October for your groups.
Thank you. Just on Dr. Krause's and Ms. Sutton-Wills' comments, I would have actually gone to the meeting, but I have some other commitments with my own cost, so I couldn't. Because the value you get from that meeting is tremendous. It's not about the state of North Carolina, it's about the FSMB. And we are the largest medical board in the country. 1 out of 6 doctors in the country has California license, so it's extremely important for us to be part of the National Association of the Medical Board, which is FSMB. So, any comments from the audience? I have one slip. Marian Hollingsworth.
Hello, my name is Marian Hollingsworth, and I'm with the Patient Safety Action Network and the Medical Board Roundtable. About a year ago, in January 2017, it was announced that the disciplinary unit had restored nearly 7,000 disciplinary documents to the board's website in compliance with the Eggman Bill of 2014. According to board documents at that time, in 2017, there were also about 15,000 documents that were still outstanding that needed to be restored online, and I was wondering if there had been any update to that number, and if so, how many are left to go. This information about disciplined doctors is invaluable to California consumers who are looking for information on their own doctors or who are trying to choose a new one. So, is there any update with that?
Ms. Hollingsworth, work with our staff. They will give you update.
Okay, can you give me a
I can't give it right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments from the audience?
Good morning. Lisa Matsubara with the California Medical Association. We would like to acknowledge the board's past outreach regarding cures, and we would be happy to continue to work with the board on physician outreach and education efforts, particularly with regard to the implementation of SB 482.
Thank you. Any other comments from audience? Comments on the phone?
We have a question from Michelle Monarset Mons from Patient Safety Action Network. Your line is open.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle. Michelle, your line is now open.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Montserrat-Ramos, and since Kim mentioned the upcoming meeting of the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee, I have to comment, as being a member of the Physician Wellness Program Working Group, I'm incredibly disappointed of not being notified of the upcoming Substance Abuse Coordination Committee meeting on Monday in Sacramento. I know at the last meeting I had asked Kim if the meeting was going to be teleconferenced, and I know it was something that you were going to look into. Considering the fact 10 years ago that I was deeply involved in this issue and how this legislation came to be, it's an issue that's very important to me, very important to many Californians, and it provides some of the few consumer protections that we have on the books today. It's something that needs to be, those consumer protections need to be supported by the board, and would really appreciate, one, notification, prior notification, and two, some effort to teleconference the meeting so that consumers and consumer groups can participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the phone?
At this time, there are no questions on the phone line, but as a reminder, please press star 1.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 25, an update from Department of Consumer Affairs, Mr. Lay.
Good morning. President Ganadev, Vice President Pines, Executive Officer Kirkmeyer, and members of the board. Well, first of all, it is good to see you all again in beautiful Los Angeles. Thank you so much for having me again to provide an update from the department to your board. For the purposes of the record, my name is Patrick Lay. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Services at the Department of Consumer Affairs. I'll try to keep my update short. My first update is a staffing update. Last month, the department welcomed a new Deputy Director for Legislative Affairs, Mr. Dennis Cuevas Romero. We're incredibly excited to have him on board. Prior to joining DCA, Mr. Cuevas Romero was the Government Relations Director for the American Heart Association, and prior to that was a Legislative Associate for the Hernandez Strategy Group. So again, we're incredibly excited to have him on board, and we hope that you can join us in welcoming him to the DCA family. The next update is regarding the directors meeting. This coming April 30th, the department will hold its second 2018 Directors Quarterly Meeting with Board Executive Officers and Bureau Chiefs. As usual, these quarterly meetings are an opportunity to make sure that Director Grafilo is available to you to hear the various issues facing the department and its various boards and bureaus. And again, that meeting will be on April 30th. My next update is regarding the Licensing and Enforcement Work Group. This past April 10th, the department hosted its first Licensing and Enforcement Work Group meeting. With over 60 board and bureau staff in attendance, we believe that this was a productive first meeting that will help the department establish licensing and enforcement standards and best practices. As a follow-up, the department will host a meeting in May that will focus solely on enforcement. The next update is regarding DCA leadership training. The department's Future Leadership Development Program and its inaugural cohort graduated last March. 12 individuals completed DCA's 8-month leadership program, participating in special leadership development exercises, working on special projects that could benefit the department, developing new working relationships, and meeting with several executives who are sharing career advice. Be on the lookout for communications from our SOLID team for more information on the next cohort. Talking about our SOLID team, SOLID is now offering additional training and team building specifically designed for board members, committee members, and executive level bureau and board staff. The courses are designed to improve interaction and facilitate cohesiveness within groups, provide a safe environment for communication, and provide tools and techniques to build positive relationships in work environment. Board members and executives can choose from a list of customized series of course topics, including conflict styles, true color, going from good to great, and working with difficult people. If you are interested in scheduling any of these classes, feel free to reach out to the Board and Bureau Services team or SOLID to schedule a training. My next update is about the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee, covered by Executive Officer Kirkmeyer. Again, this coming Monday, April 23rd, the department will reconvene the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee. Per Senate Bill 796, the committee has been tasked with examining Uniform Standard Number 4 related to drug testing standard for substance abuse licensees in a diversion program or in a program that has adopted the uniform standards. The committee will determine if the existing criteria needs to be updated based on recent development in testing research and technology and report to the legislature by January 1st, 2019. Per statute, the committee is made up of the Healing Arts Board's executive officers, designated from the Department of Healthcare Services, and is chaired by the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. And my last update is about required board member training. Dates for the 2018 Board Member Orientation Training, or BMOT, have been set. The next 3 trainings will be on June 6th, September 18th, and December 5th. Again, that's June 6th, September 18th, and December 5th. As you know, this is a one-day training in Sacramento which details the important functions and responsibilities of board members. And as you know, BMOT training is required within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to a board. Registration is available online, but again, if you need help registering, our team is more than happy to facilitate this. So that concludes my update, and thank you so much for the opportunity. And I wanted to say that while I've been at the department for, again, a short while, it's been such an incredible honor to both work with you and board staff and assisting in your mission of protecting California patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lay. Any comments? Dr. Hawkins.
So for Mr. Lee or Mr. Kirchmeyer, last year all board members were required to undergo bias training, and there was some comments, feedback solicited and given that perhaps there was a need to have additional programs because of the nature of the presentation. I don't know if there's any follow-up, given the fact you said Solid is actually offering our training, whether we have another vendor to do additional training in bias.
So yeah, so we're actually looking at, we have an individual that has given us another name for another individual. So in the next year, because we said we would do it every 2 years, we're looking to go outside to another vendor to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we still are working on, just so you know, just a little bit more of an update on the webinar training still for those that weren't able to do the in-person.
Yeah, hopefully the next one will be on online training, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
At this time, we have no questions on the phone line.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lay.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to agenda item 26, presentation on the use and impact of... No, we can completely skip that one. Yeah, we'll go to item 27, review, discussion, and possible action on guidelines for recommendation of cannabis for medical purposes. Dr. Cross and Ms. Lawson. Ms. Lawson, are you doing the...
I am. Just give me 1 second to pull up my notes. All right, sorry about that. You're skipping around. I wasn't prepared. Sorry. All right, this is, you'll find the updated guidelines at tab 27. Today I would like to present to the board just a few revisions that need to be made to the recently adopted guidelines for the recommendation of cannabis for medical purposes. And to provide some background for the members, at our October 2017 board meeting, the board did approve the guidelines for recommendation of cannabis for medical purposes. And prior to the adoption in October of 2017, the Marijuana Task Force held interested parties meetings to ensure that the board had heard from all stakeholders and took all comments into consideration. Since the adoption of the guidelines, a few things have occurred that have required the Marijuana Task Force to review and revisit the guidelines. First was a change in the federal administration, and second, the board received comments from individuals regarding the decision tree that was attached to the guidelines in the appendix. And third, the board received comments regarding the use of cannabis by pregnant or nursing women. The task force did meet with staff to discuss all of these new items. Based upon that meeting and pursuant to the information that the board had received from interested parties, the task force determined that changes needed to be made to the 2017 version of the guidelines. And I would like to again draw your attention to agenda item 27 in our packets, pages BRD 27-1 through 27-9. The first edit is on the cover page and the first page of the document indicating the date of the adoption of the revisions if approved today. The next change is found on BRD 27-3. In this section, the task force thought it was important that the information regarding the U.S. Department of Justice's cannabis enforcement policy from August of 2013 be removed. The task force believes that the best approach would be to not put in any specific information regarding the federal policies relating to cannabis in the guidelines, but to encourage physicians to be aware of the current federal administration's policies. In addition, this section does point out that cannabis is still a Schedule I controlled substance according to the Federal Controlled Substances Act. And this change will eliminate the need to update the guidelines every time there's a change in administration. The next change can be found on BRD 27-5. In the list on this page, the task force made minor technical edits and also added a footnote regarding the risks of cannabis use on a fetus or breastfeeding infant. The task force determined that the guidelines should reference the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists committee opinion regarding recommending cannabis during pregnancy and lactation. And then lastly, the task force reviewed quite extensively the decision tree and the concerns that had been sent to the board. The concerns were primarily that the old decision tree, which is found on page BRD 27-8 of your packet, stated that a physician only had to prescribe cannabis after trying a standard prescription. However, in the board's guidelines, it stated that a patient did not have to fail on standard medications in order for a physician to recommend the use of cannabis. Therefore, the guidelines in the decision tree appeared to have a conflict. The task force revised the decision tree based upon this input. It is important to note that a physician can use this decision tree as a guide when determining whether they should recommend cannabis for a patient, but the standard of care still prevails in all situations. As stated previously, when the guidelines were adopted, this document is to be used to provide guidance to physicians. A physician must still follow the standard of care when providing treatment to a patient. And I would like to ask for a motion to approve the revised guidelines and direct staff to post the revised guidelines on the board's website and notify physicians about the revised guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson. Dr. Cross, do you have anything else? Okay.
I have enjoyed my work on this task force. I'm sad to report that earlier this month I made the mistake of making a small personal investment in a Canadian cannabis company, and therefore until I divest that I will recuse myself from matters in relation to marijuana coming before the board.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. Dr. Levine.
I move to approve all the changes to the guidelines and the decision tree.
Okay, Dr. Lewis seconds. Any comments, Dr. Bola?
Yes, I was looking at and I've been following this. When you're in your discussions on the patient, pediatric patients, those that are 0 to say 17, but particularly those that are in adolescence, what was the committee's response regarding the neurocognitive issues? And that's what is concerning to me about treatment of things such as ADHD and anxiety with cannabis and the impact on the neurocognitive development. And does it specifically, did you get into that depth and detail? Because I think this is a great social experiment that nobody has the answer to as far as the use of cannabis. I think we've had a lot of people have used it for decades for treatment of cancer pain in particular. But my particular concern really is in those children, and I want to know if that's spelled out so that a well-meaning doctor picks up a guideline but doesn't maybe understand the neurocognitive impact on a 14-year-old adolescent.
Kim, do you want to take that?
No, it doesn't get to that specificity in the guidelines. They're really a high level. We really based them again off what the Federation had, and so that's really where we're coming from with the guidelines.
And so my question would be, as I'm looking at guidelines, oftentimes in this algorithmic approach to medicine, people look at the footnotes or they read it as the top portion, this applies to adults, and that you would have a separate section for pediatrics. We did that with tobacco. We said it's, minors, we don't sell cigarettes, and I really think that really needs to be part of that document.
And that's something we can look at for the future. I'm sure we'll have other revisions as we go along, but we can look at that. And probably maybe once there's more research around it as well.
Thank you. Dr. Bollard, any other comments? Okay, I got a couple people want to comment from the audience. Dr. Sherry Yafai.
Thank you so much. So I sent a letter to Officer Kirkmeyer, but I'd like to read it out loud as it presents to this. So to the Medical Board of California, with the utmost of respect for this board, I would like to present a very different perspective on cannabis. As of January 2018, California has sidestepped any need for a physician to be involved in a patient's cannabis use. With the changing laws, adult use, a person over age 21 does not need the permission from a physician to use any type of cannabis product. They can have it delivered, they can have it purchased at a store, they can have a friend buy it for them. Furthermore, they can buy any mode of delivery, oils, smokables, edibles, topicals, and as much of it as they want. In many ways, cannabis and alcohol consumption are now equivalent. Yet physicians do not write agreements or contracts with their patients about alcohol consumption, unless they are in a drug or rehab program. To burden a physician who is actually performing medical consultations and providing real medical care for their patients with an agreement in April of 2018 is unrealistic and time-consuming. No government agency is asking the cannabis dispensaries to provide a similar agreement for customers making purchases. Why are we placing this burden on our physicians who have the sole intention of helping to coordinate patients' medical care? We believe that providing physicians with a solid cannabis education, for example, CMEs, and beginning to start educating new physicians in medical school and residency programs is a far better road to take. This medical board is influential in leading the education that is needed for the countless physicians who are now being asked about cannabis daily, especially as the business of cannabis begins to near cigarette and alcohol profits and their marketing strategies, to speak to your point, to children as well. This medical board is also leading the path on how to educate physicians both in the United States and worldwide. I hope that we can lead with a positive doctor-patient focused relationship format as opposed to creating an undesirable bud tender patient relationship. This is especially important in our pediatric and elderly population who are being actively targeted by the cannabis industry. As predicted by Dr. Krause, the pot docs in California have lost their jobs with the legalization of recreational use. The proposed agreement will send the wrong message to physicians and patients and may encourage patients to seek guidance from the young bud tender who may know little about medicine and a patient's medical history. Let us physicians lead this complementary route that may prove as a pathway to decrease narcotic abuse and dependence, as cited just this past week in JAMA. I would like to just say one more thing, Dr. Bolat. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but with the newest advance in Epidiolex, an FDA now approved CBD-based medication, we are looking at the masses targeting pediatrics, and we really need to take a firm stance and a firm education pathway with doctors. We don't know anything about it from an educated standpoint, but we actually have tons of research, both here and abroad, that has shown proof of use, when it should be used, when it shouldn't be used, things that contradict this, and it's coming out every single day. This is the biggest boom financially that we're looking at in a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGregor?
Hello again. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. I came out here February 9th and got under Dr. Sherry-Yaffa's care. I want to speak to you about my subject topic. It's prescription opioid use. I was bedridden most of 2017. 14 years of 24/7 pain meds, 2 types. I'm 60 years old. Dr. Sherry and I used cannabis products only to get me off my prescription opioids. Phantom pain started in areas that were not in the sites that called for pain meds the last 2 years. Dr. Sherry was waiting for me. We started titrations of 2 prescription opioids. My combined dose of pain medicine was 120 milligrams in 24 hours for 14 years. Only using cannabis edibles, a 4-to-1 oil, CBD4, THC1, oil concentrate, 0.5 in between 1 and 2, I call it half, that's 0.5 to me. This is what the oil came in. The 0.5 microdose is only using cannabis edibles, the 4-to-1 oil concentrate, 0.5 microdose, 3 times a day for the first 3 titrations, no withdrawal symptoms. 4th and 5th titrations, a 120/60 chocolate edible was brought into arena. 1/15 microdoses in conjunction with the 4-to-1 oil and increased to 0.7 at 5th titration time frame, and 4th titration, a 32 milligram THC edible, 1/3 of unit was the dose, was brought into the arena also to substitute the 120, 115 dose. Through end-stage opiate withdrawal, later adjusted to a 1-to-1 tincture only for serious issues. At present, only 4-to-1 oil, 0.5, 2 times a day now. During detox, not one extra prescription pill ever taken once removed. Cannabis is a tool to use in medical applications. 2 other prescription meds eliminated and reduced. Dr. Sherry Yaffa was accessible 24/7 and always responded. She will always be my hero beside my wife, Vicky. Physicians in the U.S., please accept patients who use cannabis. It needs to be hand in hand now. Physicians in the U.S., please consider that. I am 25 days prescription opiate free today, cannabis only used. My wife, Vicky, is a 51-year RN.
Please conclude.
She says she has never witnessed the results of cannabis treatment for prescription opiate cessation be so good. It's helping in many ways and is a positive tool to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor, and
I would like
to see that you're doing well.
If anybody wants to know the dosing, I brought extra leftovers, and I have my backup here. I would be glad.
Thank you, though.
I would be glad to share with anybody. Thank you. Only the empty ones. Thank you.
So we'll. Any comments on the phone?
Are there any comments on the phone?
At this time, we have no questions on the phone line.
Okay, so roll call, please.
Dr. Bolott?
Aye.
Dr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Dr. Kraus?
Abstain.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye, and sorry, as I'm voting, I want to make one clarification. There was no agreement that is part of this guidelines package. So that had been a previous proposal, but as part of what we're approving today, there is no agreement being recommended. Aye.
Thanks for the clarification. Go. Okay, keep going.
Dr. Levine?
Sorry, we had one more who wanted to speak.
I'm sorry, agreement about what?
I signed a card.
Okay, no, I don't have it, do we?
We have that under number 26. Did you want to speak under this item or number 26? 26 or 27?
I thought it was the same one.
It's not, but you can speak under either one. Okay.
Yeah, we'll hold the roll call. It's okay. Remember, we can change rules.
I just wanted to raise a couple points. My name is William Britt. I'm the director of the Association of Patient Advocates. I'm currently on the panel of experts for LA County Court System. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm an epilepsy patient. I took Dilantin and other medications for 30 years and still had grand mal seizures. Probably had 2 or 3. So, and then I've been seizure-free for the last 10 years using cannabis. That means if my doctor 30 years ago wasn't afraid to talk to me about using cannabis, I might have avoided over 60 grand mal seizures that each one threatened my life. I'm as a patient advocate, I'm the director of the Association of Patient Advocate, and patients call me all the time, and sometimes they're afraid to talk to their doctors, and I've talked to doctors who are also afraid to talk to their patients. And I believe the guidelines, having guidelines that say cannabis has to be the last resort, is going to create a lot of fear. It's going to create a lot of, it's just going to increase the fear and it's going to restrict the interaction, the patient-doctor interaction. If we were talking about alcohol or even tobacco or even a lot of over-the-counter medicines, we'd be talking about the death, the LD50. We'd be talking about how many people die from using this cannabis. Using these over-the-counter drugs and prescription medicines. Prescription medicines, almost 100,000 people die every year just from prescription medicines, and we're currently in an opioid crisis. And it turns out that the states that have passed these medical laws have lower opioid use, have lower opioid deaths. So restricting doctors' ability to talk to patients about use of cannabis is detrimental in my effect. We know that by the Taskin report that it doesn't affect that it doesn't have the danger of tobacco that tobacco does. It doesn't cause the lung damage to the lung function anywhere comparative of tobacco. Yet tobacco is sold, is used on a regular basis. We mentioned that it's legal now, so as more and more people have access to it, again, it's really important that they be able to talk to their doctors unrestricted and be comfortable talking to the doctors if they start to self-medicate. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't like using prescription drugs at all, and the first thing they want to do, and I believe they should have access to one of the least harmful substances that is known to man. There hasn't been one death attributed to cannabis use, to cannabis overdose, I'm sorry. There's never been an overdose cannabis. And when it comes to pediatricians, the fear is, and parents, the fear is incredible. The fear is tremendous right now. And I fear that people, because of this, many thousands of patients are suffering needlessly, and doctors are still afraid needlessly. So it's really important when you set these guidelines that that doctors look at this, oh my God, it's the last resort. You can't be, you have to do everything first. And, if they have this mentality, it's wrong. So I ask that you treat it just the way the danger that it, give it the regulations with the danger that it presents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brett. I am sure you are aware of that FDA just approved, I think, use of FDA just approved the use of cannabis product for epilepsy. So just want to let you know. Any other public comment? Okay, back to roll call, please.
Dr. Levine?
Abstain.
Dr. Lewis? Ms. Pines?
Yes.
Ms. Sutton-Wills?
Yes.
Mr. Warmoth?
Aye.
Dr. Yip?
Aye.
Dr. Gonadev?
Aye. Do we have enough votes to approve?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so is Mr. Grant here?
Just give him a minute.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go to item 28, update from the Special Review, Application Review and Special Programs Committee. Miss Lawson.
All right.
You tried. I can't do that.
Nice try. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, again. Hold on. I can probably actually do this on the fly without finding this.
So,
All right, I have it. Yep. While you all were sleeping in this morning, the Application Review and Special Programs Committee met at 8:30 a.m. this morning. Dr. Hawkins, Dr. Yip, and I were present and established the quorum for the meeting. In the closed session, Ms. Alameda presented 2 physician and surgeon applications, and the committee made a recommendation to the Chief of Licensing, and we then adjourned the short meeting. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
That's really fast, Christina.
Yes.
So,
the meeting itself was very fast. I believe it was 8 minutes.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the audience? I mean, from the board? Nope. Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
At this time, there are no questions on the phone line.
Okay, thank you. Is he ready? Mr. Grant will take a couple more items while you're getting ready. I'll go to item number 29, which is Vertical Enforcement Program update. Oh, there you are, Gloria. I was looking for you. Yeah.
Just go ahead. It's okay. Mr. Grant, Dr. Grant, do you mind just stepping back in?
We can turn that PowerPoint up too, if anybody has.
Good morning. So on 29, we've seen positive impacts in your investigations since the staffing increases at the Health Quality Investigation Unit. We continue to work through the backlogged investigations, and we're working as fast as possible in the Health Quality Enforcement section to process accusations and things we have accepted for prosecution, including petitions to revoke probation and such.
Gee, Gloria, you could always speak well. I mean, what's today? So go.
I was a little confused by that, and then Dr. Igor going up there. Good morning. We've seen positive impacts from the staffing improvements in the Health Quality Investigation Unit. We continue to work through backlogged investigations, and we are working as fast as possible with our partners at HQIU to process investigations. Our hardworking and dedicated staff is 100% dedicated to your public protection mission, and we continue to meet with our HQIU partners. I meet with Ms. Nichols on a regular basis, and my supervising deputy attorney generals meet with their counterpart, supervising investigators 2s and commanders in each of their cities to ensure that we are not only addressing big picture policy issues in the management of our work, but as needed, we get down into granular levels concerning the daily issue concerning evidence collection in investigations, witness locations, subject interviews, expert reviews, and evidence. And of course, timelines. Even though timelines are always at the forefront, quality cannot be sacrificed. And ultimately, what really drives our standards are identifying the most important cases to prosecute under interim suspension orders, mental health evaluations, Penal Code Section 23 bail recommendations at criminal courts. We also meet on a regular basis with Ms. Delp on closures and dispositions. We really want to commend her and Ms. Piva of her staff on working with us to talk about these cases in our dispositions, closing cases that should be closed, and relooking at cases that perhaps need to be revisited. In their end, our staff works above and beyond in hours, passion, and commitment and dedication to all aspects of your work. This is true for lead prosecutors and folks that work at your headquarters on a daily basis, managing anything that comes across your way and helping you as your lawyers. Don't forget that we do a lot of your civil litigation, as well as defense of appeals and writs, which manages a lot of our time. I'd like to announce that we have that concludes my vertical enforcement report.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Any comments, questions from the board? Dr. Lewis.
You and I have been through this for many years, you longer than I have, and we are judged by numbers, backlog. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I don't know. There it comes in.
I can barely hear you, and I'm very close to you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
we
there
are
you go.
judged by numbers and backlog, and I'm a numbers person, and you're all hard and dedicated, hardworking, dedicated. I that's beyond reproach. But I need to know numbers. I need to know where you were last month and the month before, and what's the problem. And I'm going to ask Ms. Nichols the same thing. But it looks like things are going up. Am I wrong?
Because I was caught off guard, I did leave behind at my chair part of the executive officer's report. If you look at how quickly we're filing your accusations from year to year, we went down from 120 days to 64 days, and that's month to month. I don't know what page it is, but I believe it is agenda item number 24A or 24B. So on prosecutions, we are putting the public on notice of completed investigations we've accepted for prosecution at a record pace. I'm very proud of that. That's 64 days, that's calendar days, and that's reflective of our staff who has to work Saturdays and Sundays and after hours. That's why I'm very committed to their passion for this work, because they're working well above the 100% that is expected of them. I have folks working a quarter above their positions at 120%. With respect to investigations in particular, we are bound by working hand in glove with Health Quality Investigation Unit. I don't supervise their staff and they don't supervise our staff, but we work as a team. These cases are very complicated, and I think that ultimately if you wanted to compare numbers nose to tail and side by side, the medical board is superior in all respects to Department of Consumer Affairs clients and how we manage our cases. And without pointing out other licensees and what they do and how, they may rank and how they provide services to consumers, we're doing very well. I'm happy to provide more numbers if you know exactly what you want from us. But I think Ms. Nichols and I are working with what we have, working within the context of a staffing void that she dealt with valiantly for a long time, and also the system, which will not allow us to push any harder than we already are pushing on these cases. And we're very proud of it. I know that it is a timeline and enforcement issue that you are bound by, and I know that it's difficult to explain to a patient why it takes so long, but it's also an explanation we have to give to doctors that we looked at the case very carefully, and that when Ms. Kirchmeier signs those accusations that puts before the world what this doctor did, that we've made sure that we got it right, and we get it right 99% of the time. We have very few withdrawals and dismissals. They happen, and that's a loss, and that's what we're looking at as well. So even the medical board's filings, as a percentage of cases that maybe, from the doctor's perspective, we shouldn't have filed, very low. And we should be very proud of that. But again, I'm happy to sit down.
Well, excuse me, the reason why I ask is I get questions, and I just got questions from the governor's office several weeks ago, and they look at that. They don't look at all this other, stuff going on and load stuff. They just want to know if the backlog is going down.
Well, I will say that...
And I need like a 2 or 3 sentence answer that really says yes it is or no it isn't.
What I can tell you is that last year we went above our $13.5 million budget for legal services from the medical board. We went above it by $1.5 million with our existing staff. If you want our staff at the Attorney General's office to turn things around, we could always look at staffing. We have not received more staffing since, and I may be corrected, since maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I don't know. We don't keep track of that. Because we're very lucky with the people that we have, and we ask them to continually dig deep into that passion bucket, which means they're losing weekends, they're not going home. You're doctors, so I'm sure it's not very compelling, and that's because you obviously work in the same way, and we have lawyers on here. You do the job that it takes, and you devote the amount of hours and sacrifices to complete it. But we can always look at staffing, Dr. Lewis, or increasing our legal services budget with you. We're trying very hard not to exceed it. We've had discussions with Ms. Lawley and Ms. Kirchmeier. This board has not asked us traditionally to stop work. I commend you for that. Other boards will tell us to stop working on their cases. We don't believe it's a good approach, even though it has to happen. Sometimes if budget augmentations cannot occur, the board can always go and try and get a budget augmentation, but ultimately we are tasking our folks to work as hard as possible. And if the numbers are not to your satisfaction, we can always see about increasing the budget, which would allow the Attorney General to hire more staff. That's TBD.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Actually, I think the reason probably Dr. Lewis's question came is each time Senate Rules Committee interviews a person, the first question they ask is, why does it take so long a reappointment? So you can see where my board members are coming from. And I think that we're just turning around. We're making a dent like what we're doing with the opioid. So we got a long way to go, but I think working together with the entire team, we'll get there. Thank you. Dr. Yip.
I sat on the collaboration workshop committee that attended by Ms. Goria, Castro, and also Ms. Nichols and our staff. We're always looking for ways to expedite and shorten the whole process. I think next time we're all going to invite, hopefully, someone from the Office of the Midwife Law Judge. That is another issue that the timeline will be affected because they are the one that control the hearing schedule too. But believe me, they all work very, very hard to shorten the timeline.
Yeah. No.
On Judge Morazzini's aspect of this, he is the main judge over the Office of Administrative Hearings. I meet with Judge Alvord. Chief Wolf and I have met with OH for all of our clients, but specifically this client is special. Why? Because you actually have a dedicated hearing panel. No other client has that at the Office of Administrative Hearings. Your cases get priority with very highly trained administrative law judges. And they got an increase in 2014 of 21 judges. At the same time, not only are they trained, but when cases are vertically enforced, Judge Alvord has supported our staff and our clients' requests that they understand that our lawyers are not fungible on the trying of those cases. What does that mean? What it means is you can't triple set my DAGs on hearings, which is what's happening right now. And what that means is you have 3 cases going to trial at the same time in the expectation that 2/3 of them may settle or maybe all of them will settle. That's not a really good approach because we want quality. But if all 3 of those cases are vertically enforced, I should not replace the DAG because this DAG has lived with their investigator through the life of this case. I appreciate that Judge Alvord has given us that small mitigation to make sure that if you're going to double or triple set my DAGs, that they understand that these cases are not fungible because of vertical enforcement. 40% of our cases are not vertical enforcement, and on those cases, we obviously don't tell Office of Administrative Hearings, hey, this is a vertical enforcement case. Those are left blank. Same with petitions for reinstatement. DAGs are a little bit more fungible on that, and we can find someone to handle that case. But thank you, Dr. Yip.
Thank you.
Ms.
Lawson.
Yeah, I guess I have some feedback and maybe a question too for Kim. We do get asked all the time when we're being interviewed, or I mean, even members of the public ask why things take so long, right? And that's usually because members of the public see the beginning point in the process and the end point in the process, and the middle is really mystifying. And I know you talked about our new graphic person, but it's often useful to just have a one-pager, whether it's graphically represented, about all the different things that go on in this process, because that's the mystifying part, right? And that's where members of the public say, well, how did it possibly get lost at step 3 of this. No one contacted me, and I didn't find out about anything till the end. So if we've got a new graphic person, it might be, and I don't know if we already have this document somewhere, I'm just not aware of it, but we might want to take a look at that and dust it off and refresh it. And make sure, we see as part of our packets lots of charts and tables that have, 60 days and 360 days and that sort of thing on it, to have that in these packets so that when the public's reviewing these packets maybe for the first time, they understand the complexity of these processes.
We do. We have a disciplinary process that's on our website. What we can do is we can pull that out and maybe put some timelines in each of those, and we can definitely put it in each package so people can see it.
But I think just taking a look at it to see how user-friendly it is also with our graphics people, because I know that these marketing people can do a really good job in presenting in a way that people can better understand, who aren't doing this every day.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, comments from the audience.
I had a response for Ms.
Okay,
Lawson,
I'll
but-
take that afterwards, Gloria.
In our January 2018 meeting chaired by Dr. Yip of the Enforcement Committee, we had a flow chart that was co-presented by Andrew Hegelin and Matthew Davis of each of our offices. That graphic really, I think, is a really good explanation for this board. You need to look no farther than your January meeting. Regrettably, we only had time to present it in front of the Enforcement Committee. We really wish the full board had heard that presentation. But it's available on a webcast. It's available in your historical documents. And I think that really was a great presentation, co-presented by a supervisor in each of our units. And one thing that the chart doesn't show is that, in the last 5 years, patient complaints have gone up from 6,000 to 8,000. And again, no increase in our staff and a time of great, vacancies in HQIU. We're very proud of the work. We could do better, yes. We could get more resources, yes. But ultimately, cases that are going to take a long time to manage, and these are usually cases that are very complex and that probably will be filed, will have impact. At the same time, the costs and us not being able to recover your cost of investigation and prosecution from doctors also allows doctors to have a lot of time to litigate their cases. And again, back to Dr. Lewis's point, that timeline, perhaps the patient should understand, is also due process, which I don't think is a bad thing. And we don't own that. Office of Administrative Hearings is going to do every single thing possible to present to you a very good, well-reasoned proposed decision. And we're going to do everything we can to propose to you stipulations and work the defaults as fast as possible. But even that involves due process. And that's what I'll say about that.
What I would say is I think that, again, I and all of the members of the board and those of us who spend, we all spend our time serving on the disciplinary panels. I think we understand the process, and we understand that when we're presented with certain cases, there are, pros and cons to settlement. There are reasons why you might choose to do one thing or another. What's mystifying is the process. And frankly, I think members of the public can well understand that things take a really long time if they just understand what we're doing while we're taking that really long time. And so it's that middle, again, that's mystifying, because it is kind of a black box once their complaint goes in until, something is determined. And so to the extent, I think we should all work together to get a document in place so when we have a question come up from a member of the public, they've made a complaint, they want to know what's going to happen now, we can give it to them and say, here's the reasons why it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight.
And I think as a whole, Department of Consumer Affairs, now that it has some of the Office of the Attorney General statistics that will be reported on an annual basis every January. Our first report was already published. It's on our website. That's under Business and Professions Code Section 312.2. You can see the lineup of every single Department of Consumer Affairs client, side by side, 35 of these client agencies, medical board being one of them. And you are at the top of every metric in terms of the least amount of time to get from point A to B to C to D and to the end. Obviously, it only represents what the Attorney General is bringing to the table, and obviously it may not match maybe how the metrics are measured at DCA or at OAH, who is likewise required to report under 312.1 of the Business and Professions Code. But I think getting the three state agencies together can serve the public in understanding and demystifying a process that is theirs, and that is theirs to use and theirs to understand. So I think we're getting to that point. And the legislature is the one that wanted this report, Dr. Lewis. And so the medical board should look at our report. Every single client should look at the report and what we're saying about your metrics. But you are one of the best. I'm happy to report.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. I'm trying to get the time constraints. We got a ton. So any comments from audience? Comments on the phone?
There is a comment from Eric Andrus. Your line is now open.
Go ahead, Mr. Andrus.
Sometimes these explanations of things are like a Pandora's box. It just opens up a world of other questions. Real quick, your last report said there were close to 10,000 complaints coming in, but most of those are being closed. So you have to wonder, I mean, it begs the question, do you even have the ability and the money? Let's say half of those were actually legitimate complaints. Do you have the ability and the money to even process 5,000 complaints, or are they just being tossed in the trash like they were in 1999 when the medical board was throwing complaints in the trash so that they didn't have to process them? I mean, it's just bizarre that many complaints are coming in, and 70-80% of them aren't worth processing? My complaint was not processed. My sister is dead from a negligent doctor, and you did nothing on the complaint. And you have to wonder about the abilities of these people who are working in the Attorney General's office and your investigators. They spend all this time working on these complaints, and then the board just disregards what they say and do what they want. Ms. Castro said that these administrative law judges are highly trained, but we see decisions coming through all the time where the board disregards what the administrative law judge says and does something completely different. So how trained was the administrative law judge in that case? I mean, it just opens such a big box of questions. And I agree with Christina in that every single complaint that comes through should have a timeline on Breeze showing every step of everything that's happening so that we can see it. When you look at the Contractor State License Board page, when they process a complaint, it gives you a bullet item of every single charge. You don't even do that. You don't give us enough information. There is no transparency for people like me looking at your Breeze. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Andrus. I can assure you that nothing is being thrown in the trash. Any other comments from the phone?
No additional comments from the phone.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Castro. Can you go to the next item, please?
With pleasure. I'd like to just announce the addition of a new Deputy Attorney General in our San Francisco office. Rebecca Wagner is joining us from the San Francisco Attorney General's office. San Francisco District Attorney's office. She comes with a wealth of experience. She had been running the asset forfeiture unit there for many years, handled a lot of high-profile prosecutions, and she joins, of course, our cadre of very public protection and passionate individuals in our office. And so she was a great addition, and she was a backfill for our retired Deputy Brenda Reyes. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. Any comments, questions? Okay, any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
No comments on the phone.
Thank you, Gloria.
No, thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to item 26. Dr. Grant, please come in. So, presentation on the use and impact of cannabis to patients. Dr. Grant, please come forward. Dr. Grant is a neuropsychiatrist whose research and clinical interests have focused on the effect of various diseases and drugs on the brain and behavior. Since 2000, Dr. Grant has been a director of State of California-funded Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research, CMCR. And Dr. Grant, if you can keep that within 15 minutes, we truly appreciate it. We're going to lose our quorum fairly soon. Thank you.
Sure. Well,
First, thank you very much. I'm really here to be a resource to you. I have a presentation, but I can skip parts of it and go to the things that are of greatest interest to you. So interrupt me at any time, okay?
Please go ahead.
Basically, I think the board knows all of this. I'll skip through it. You probably remember that Cannabis Americana was available even back in 1913, supplied by our friends at Eli Lilly, and it had all sorts of putative actions, analgesic, hypnotic, so on and so forth. It then disappeared for reasons that you know. Why has it reappeared now? Well, in the 90s, there were a lot of anecdotal reports of benefit, and there was an increase in the science of the endocannabinoids as they became to be known. The receptor for THC, CB1, CB2 were discovered, and the endogenous signaling molecules became known. At least two of them are known now, anandamide and 2-AG. You know this map. It changes all the time. It's probably already out of date. This has to do with the states that have got medical marijuana laws and the states in dark green that have actually legalized marijuana. So that is certainly changing the landscape. In terms of the endocannabinoid system, you may know that, again, these CB1 and CB2 receptors are widely distributed. Of particular interest in neuropsychiatry and neurology are the CB1 receptors, which have a lot of distribution in different areas of the brain, including all of these structures. And from the density of distributions, you can infer what the actions of the agonists and antagonists of the CB receptors would be. So there is a lot of concentration in areas, for example, responsible for memory, coordination of movement, attention, and so on and so forth. The endocannabinoids include anandamide there in the top left and 2-AG. There probably are others, but they haven't been characterized at this point. These are interesting transmitters. They do not work in the classical way, such as dopamine, for example, where it's released, it acts on the neuron beyond it and has an effect. Rather, these are circuit breakers or modulators of other neurotransmitters typically, although they also have direct actions. So in this cartoon, what it shows on the left is that, let's say you have a glutamatergic neuron, which is putting forth glutamate, that then acts on the neuron beyond. What it triggers is not only the action in the neuron beyond, but also a reciprocal release of endocannabinoids, which then track back and serve to either shut down or otherwise modify the original action. So it's important to know that these are circuitries that modulate things in various ways, and depending on whether you're dealing with an excitatory system or an inhibitory system, the actions can be different, as you can appreciate. Raphael Mechoulam there, an Israeli scientist, is the father or the grandfather of this whole area. He discovered that THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, is the principal active, psychoactive ingredient of cannabis. His lab characterized the chemical structure of THC and also cannabidiol. So back in the 90s, when our work began, the Institute of Medicine of the National Academy of Sciences did a review and found that there were promising clues in these areas: appetite, nausea control, analgesia, movement disorders, in terms of possible medicinal actions of cannabis. In California, which really has been a leader in this field, I would say at a state level, there was established this Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research that I direct, and it was established really following the passage of the Compassionate Use Act in 1996. and very strong interest by then Senator John Vasconcellos, who approached the University of California to ask an important question that actually legislators often do not ask, which is, what is the evidence for medicinal benefits, and how can we understand it more? Now, he was a proponent of medicinal cannabis, but he also wanted to know the facts. So that I really give him a lot of credit for that. So partly through his efforts, the legislature and the governor established the Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research at UC San Diego. And then we proceeded to use the funding to ask for proposals to do research in two main areas, which were neuropathic pain control and control of movement problems in multiple sclerosis. This very dizzying picture is there for a reason. You don't have to track it, but it shows how complex it is to do medical marijuana research. The only legal source is the federal government. They have a farm at the University of Mississippi that will ship medicinal cannabis to investigators once approvals are given. But the approvals take a lot of steps. So, for example, at our own California level, we have the RAPC panel, Research Advisory Panel, that has to approve any proposal. Health and Human Services has to approve a proposal. Actually, they've dispensed more recently with this step, but you still have to get FDA, DEA approval, and so on and so forth. So it takes a fair amount of effort and infrastructure to do this work at all. CMCR sponsored work in different locations in California. You can see them there. And basically, the studies that we did were of this form. They were short-term studies. A lot of them were focused on neuropathic pain in HIV/AIDS or other conditions. This example is Donald Abrams, professor at UC San Francisco, who did a study wherein he admitted AIDS patients with neuropathic pain to an inpatient unit, studied them through a stabilization phase, and then they were randomized to either active or inactive treatment. And you can see the yellow lines are the placebo, red lines are the cannabis, 4% THC, and there was a beneficial effect. And there were a number, you can't read this the way these slides are set up, but there are 7 studies that have now been completed, 6 of them on pain. They were all positive in the short term, as well as a study on multiple sclerosis spasticity. Actually, to be truthful, I was very surprised at these results, because I thought at the end of the day we'd get some positive results, some negative results, can't tell. These were very consistent results, and as I'll share in a moment, the National Academy, the Institute of Medicine and the National Academy of Sciences recently conducted another big report, and they reached the same conclusion. So how good is medicinal cannabis in the treatment of, say, neuropathic pain? Let's forget this slide. Just trust me to say that the number needed to treat metric, which is one metric of efficacy, is that the lower the number, the better the drug is at controlling whatever it is. So you see cannabis falls kind of in between. It's not as good as the tricyclic antidepressants, which are the classical treatment for neuropathic and chronic pain. But is about as good as gabapentin, maybe it outmatches lamotrigine, certainly very much better than SSRI. So that's kind of where it sits. So what we found in a nutshell then was there was evidence for efficacy. The side effects were modest because we were using 4% or at most 7% THC containing cannabis, but mostly 4%, even lower. There were some cognitive short-term effects, but they disappeared, and basically it was fairly tolerable. Now, here is the National Academy's report that I was referencing. They did really an encyclopedic review of the whole field, and their conclusion is that there is substantial or conclusive evidence of cannabinoid efficacy in chronic pain, spasticity, control of nausea, moderate evidence in improving sleep, particularly in people with medical problems that are complicated by pain, and so on and so forth. One area where they probably will need to, update their findings is epilepsy. As you know, just yesterday, cannabidiol got approval for Lennox-Gastaut and Dravet epilepsies for the Epidiolex product. Anyway, obviously there is some evidence for benefit, at least in the short term. Long term we have to still look at. There are problems with administering cannabis in smoked form. That doesn't mean it should never be done, by the way. Some people would argue this is never an appropriate approach. I don't agree with that, but it's not the optimal approach, that's for sure. There are differences that have to be studied if we move from inhaled to oral. These curves just show you, if you can see the dark green line, it is the concentration of THC in blood after either inhalation or taking something like Marinol by mouth. You can see the curves are very different, so we need to understand the kinetics, and the effects, for example, on driving could be very different depending on whether somebody has inhaled or taken by mouth. There could be an acute effect that fades fairly quickly, whereas by mouth there could be a delayed effect and you don't know what's going on. So these are studies that really need to be done, and physicians need to know what to advise their patients in terms of these regard. You know very well there are endless devices now for vaporizing marijuana. I think smoking is going slightly out of favor, but inhaling it still is very much au courant. These are only 6 things. We did look, this awesome looking device is called a volcano. Basically what it does, it heats the cannabis product to a vaporization point, but not to the point of combustion, so you don't get the carbon dioxide and all that. And we were just curious to see if that worked in the same manner as smoked. And in fact it does. Here's a study at UC Davis from Dr. Barth Wilsey, which basically showed in a group of patients with neuropathic pain the vaporized cannabis was effective in the short term. Interestingly, what he found, we can't read because it's such fine print, is a very low concentration of THC worked in his study, about 2%. So it's possible that we may be at a point where there is a true distinction between therapeutic efficacy for certain indications and the desired concentration if you want to be really stoned. They may be able to separate those out. Now, somebody will always be a little bit stoned, but maybe not very, is the point. Now you know that there are now oral mucosal sprays, for example, GW Pharmaceuticals, who are the same people that manufacture Epidiolex that was recently approved. They do a spray in the mouth. The idea is that maybe the absorption is better through the oral mucosa than by swallowing, and you could get better auto-titration. So they have a product called nabiximols, which is both THC and CBD product. That product also has shown efficacy in neuropathic pain control. In the future, where I think the research is going is to look at really pharmaceutically produced agonists, antagonists, and modulators, just like we do with many neuroactive drugs. Right now there are 2 cannabinoids, synthetic cannabinoids, that are approved. Dronabinol, which is actually THC. It's nothing but THC, but it has a different name. Curiously, marijuana, which is Schedule 1, but dronabinol is Schedule 3. So you just think about that for a minute, what the differences might be. But cannabidiol is another common ingredient in cannabis, and that has gotten a lot of interest lately. It seems to have actions that may include anti-inflammatory, analgesic, potentially even antipsychotic actions, anxiolytic, and anticonvulsive. How it works is not known. It is not a strong, it doesn't have strong action on the CB receptors we know about. It may inhibit an enzyme that degrades endocannabinoids. That may be part of its action, or it may have other actions, not known. You can't read this. It just shows that there have been some clinical and preclinical studies on epilepsy and cannabidiol, which generally have shown a positive result. But this is the study you will have heard about. It is the Lennox-Gastaut study that Dervinsky published, and basically it shows there is a substantial reduction in likelihood of having certain kinds of seizures, in this case drop seizures, in people who got the active cannabidiol treatment. There is also some data of cannabidiol as an anti-anxiety agent. Since time is short, I won't go into this. Basically, the studies had to do with getting people who are anxious about public speaking to do public speaking, and then some of them got cannabidiol and some of them did not, and then they had to get ratings of how anxious and freaked out were they, and they were less freaked out on cannabidiol. That's the answer there, but needs more needs more work.
What politicians should do. Okay.
What?
That's what politicians should do.
Well, there we go. As to the possible antipsychotic effect, it's very intriguing. I'm a neuropsychiatrist. I don't know if cannabidiol will be one of the new treatments, but there are a few studies now that are suggesting that if you give cannabidiol and a more traditional antipsychotic, both drugs reduce certain target symptoms of schizophrenia, but it turned out that cannabidiol here in the lower curve had a better effect on the so-called negative symptoms of schizophrenia, which is the withdrawal, the asocial symptoms of schizophrenia. So that's intriguing, and we'll have to see if that bears out. It also had fewer bad side effects, such as extrapyramidal symptoms, the movement disorders that can occur from neuroleptics, and also weight gain that can occur. So now, just to wrap it up, because I know you want to go to lunch, talking about cannabis before lunch is probably a funny thing to do, because it just makes you more irritated and wanting to go to lunch. But the things I would say is, from the public health perspective, the benefits may be, that these compounds may actually be additional medicines in our armamentarium. We need to, though, look which ones really work for what and what conditions and what patient groups. For example, old people like me haven't been studied. It may be different in a 30-year-old than a 70-year-old, right? So we have to look at all those things. However, from a broad public health standpoint, it is interesting that in the states that have had medical marijuana laws, there have been reductions in opioid analgesic overdose deaths. You've probably read about that. There have been decreased analgesic opioid misuse, fewer admissions to hospital, fewer deaths. Decreased obesity, I don't know what to make of that, and mixed findings on whether there might even be reduction in alcohol and other drug use in these states. Again, these are public health research studies that need to be done. I'm just going to skip by this because our time is limited. So, but what are the potential harms of our medicinal cannabis laws? Well, first of all, could be increasing cannabis use now that it's available. Again, the studies are just beginning to understand whether there is in fact more heavy cannabis use in the medicinal cannabis and also in the cannabis legalized states. And particularly, of course, there's a concern about young people. Right now, we just don't have the information, but I'm hoping that one thing California will do with the money that it collects via taxes is to do some good studies to exactly inform us in this area. So you could have more of that. Again, I said there was decreased alcohol use. Some studies have said there might be even increased. Motor vehicle accidents. This is a very complex problem. Clearly, cannabis, particularly stronger, when you get into 15% THC, has effects on coordination, memory, perception, all these things that are important to driving. Of course, the typical stereotype is that the person fueled on alcohol thinks they're doing great and they're driving 90 miles an hour in the left-hand lane, whereas the cannabis user is in the fourth lane driving 30 miles an hour. And so they could cause an accident too by being so slow. But we do need to know more, and there's actually a CMCR study funded by the state of California right now that is looking specifically at cannabis and driving. And so there are a number of other obvious public and social policy issues. You can't read that, can't read that. I would conclude by saying then that from a medical standpoint, we do probably have a new set of possible therapeutic agents that may engage a system in our bodies, the endocannabinoid systems, that have not been targeted by other medications. Is this going to cure everything? Of course not. But it may provide another avenue of treatment. And of course, we then need to know, since every drug has possible benefits and possible harms, what is that equipoise, and which should we do from a regulatory standpoint? So maybe I should stop and see if there are any questions. Did I go okay as to time?
Dr. Grant, thank you so much. I think it's just right time for us to hear some scientific evidence. I think for many Californians who voted for the approval was also including the criminal reform, because we didn't want to throw everybody into jail. So that was one of the reasons, along with the medicinal effect. So, but this is more important for us. I just have a couple questions on your presentation. One is on the HIV pain. I was puzzled because you had a looks like statistically significant effect on short term, but on the long term it came back to placebo. So I'm just curious what that is.
Oh, that's because it was a short-term study, and then the administration ended.
Okay.
And so what it just shows is that once you stop the drug, then the person gradually had more pain all over again. Yeah.
And tell us, you're well aware of level 1, level 2, and level 3 evidence scientifically. Level 1 is like the randomized control study, definitely proving that it is useful. What are the level 1 evidences for cannabinoids for what kind of diseases or symptoms?
Yeah, I think I would, again, refer to the National Academy's report where they said strong and conclusive, which would be level 1 or level 1.5 type of evidence. There are really not enough long-term randomized RCTs to answer that question. But I think for neuropathic pain, we're close to that level of evidence now. And also the control of severe muscle spasms and multiple sclerosis. Of course, we've known for a long time that the cannabinoids have effect on nausea. I think the evidence is pretty good on that. It's not as powerful as ondansetron and those kinds of drugs, but it's there. And also in terms of weight gain in people who are suffering from chronic inanition, that's I think the evidence is quite good on that. Again, it's not a powerful effect, but it's there. I think the rest is a lower level of evidence, I would say.
Okay. Dr. Bola.
Yes, thank you. This was just fantastic, Dr. Grant. I have a quick question, and that has to do with some of the issues on stem cell, and then if individuals are actually smoking in marijuana, and the issue on the fungal transmission. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that at all? Because people are taking, we've had patients where we've had to really withdraw them down off cannabis that were very heavy smokers prior to stem cell.
Well, I think you touch on an important conundrum here. Now, the marijuana that was supplied to us from NIDA was tested for fungi, pesticides, and things like that. And under proper storage conditions, there's no evidence that these, infections of the marijuana develop. However, when you buy it from the store, you don't know how it was stored, harvested, or anything like that, the provenance of it. So I think this is a danger that our patients should be aware of. Now, I think that under the California legislation, there's going to be testing for both pesticides and fungi, but I don't think that is started yet. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Back again, thank you. I want to say first, I'm an asthmatic with allergies. 57 out of 75 skin tests came back 57 of them out of 75 were hot positives on me. For me, no smoking because of asthma. I only used edibles through the treatments I've discussed with you. The desire to get high was not my desire. I stuck with the microdosing through 5 titrations. My weight was 226 when I arrived. Constipation was very difficult with pain medicine, long-term use. That has resolved itself.
And your weight now?
My weight now is 210.
So you've dropped
So I dropped 16 pounds
in 2 months.
in 2 months. No one dies from cannabis overdose. Alcoholism has killed some of my friends. 2 of them, one had cancer, one was alcoholic. He desired using cannabis but had no access to it, and it was sad. His wife died on the same day he did from alcohol poisoning and drinking for many years. It was a double casket funeral, and that will really make you think about things when you see one. I was trying to explain my prescriptions that I've removed. I'll just say 13 prescription meds have been removed from my regime. I will talk about the titrations from the prescription pain medicines. Each titration within a short while feels like gravity increases 60-70% on your body. Seems like the phantom pain, acute high pain areas, each titration, it seems to lower the localized sharp pain. But for some reason it becomes moderate pain, but spreads out in bone areas near the acute sites. Pain dilutes in intensity as time passes. When you pass final stage prescription opiate withdrawals, you may feel better for days, and then diluted waves of withdrawals may present many days past prescription opiate cessation. The total cost of my cannabis was $2,700 for my entire 2-month treatment. I am down to 2 oils a day, 0.5. I think 2 months is needed for a person like me, not 30 days. Using delivery wherever possible statewide and in all states keeps a patient at home and is convenient to have their medicine delivered. Reciprocity, I hope I pronounced it right.
Please conclude.
People are locked in their states and it reduces commerce flow. It should be legal in all states, reciprocity. The World Health Organization is looking into cannabis rescheduling worldwide. The FDA taking feedback until April 26 from patients in study. FDA looking at rescheduling of cannabis in the United States. I urge you to support them. Thank you, California, for making this possible.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Any other comments from the...
Sorry, so I'm going to speak separately. Thank you, Dr. Grant, for that presentation. It was very informative. Members of the board, it is time. Last night, the announcement that Epidiolex, a CBD-based medication, is pending FDA approval. This medication, along with Marinol, a synthetic THC, is already FDA approved and used in the hospital and the outpatient environment. So now we have 2 FDA-approved medications that do the job of one plant that is legal and non-lethal here in California as of January 2018. All of these paths can be non-smokable, for example, a pill or a spray in the mouth. It is time we educate our physicians and stop distancing ourselves from the reality of what is going on and what is being actively advertised to the everyday individual. Cannabis-based medications, both good and bad, are now available everywhere and are being recommended by untrained, uneducated bud tenders. We need a medical board that will stand up and guide us, lead us. This medical board represents the largest state that has legalized. Please don't abstain from this issue. Please engage in it, hire consultants, and move forward. AB 710 and cannabis education should be an issue that we stand behind, either for or against, but we should be the most knowledgeable about these issues, especially when you note that California has had medical marijuana rules for over 2 decades. Medical. I urge this board to form an educational path for all physicians, as this is an important need in our community. Ignorance and abstinence is no longer a position on this issue. Also, I would like to urge this group to create a real medical committee for cannabis, not deferring to the Bureau of Cannabis, a non-medical entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yafai. Any other comments? Yes, sir. Come on in. Just take them. I'll be back in a minute.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Professor Grant, for your very interesting presentation. My name is Alon Blatt. I'm originally from Israel. In Israel, we have a multidisciplinary geriatric centers where we integrate and treat elderly people using cannabis. We have geriatric physicians, pain management, neurology, and a few others. And I just wanted to share a few of the findings that we had from our patients that we've treated for over 6 months. I think it's very important. We've been seeing that cannabis helped over 87.5% reported pain reduction, and the reported pain level was reduced from a median of 10 out of 10 to 2.5. Over 50% of our patients got off opiates, and another 25% reduced their dosages. Over 50% of our patients reported an improvement in their appetite, and so far we saw a reduction of 17% in total number of medication used. The most important thing is, since cannabis doesn't affect one system, it has a multi-system effect, we saw that 93.8% of our patients reported an overall improvement in their condition. I think California is the first state in the world to legalize the use of medical cannabis. It should untie the hands of the physician, especially now when it's available everywhere, to really collect the data, help people. We know, we didn't see any, and Professor can correct me, any adverse effect, serious one, maybe some dryness in our mouth. That's why, for example, in Israel, we also brought in clinical pharmacists to look at the interaction between the medication, which is so important to understand, especially when we deal with patients with polypharmacy. So I would urge, I think, continue to do the amazing work you do in leading the world and showing that there is a better way, at least for our patient, there is a better way to get older. You don't have to take horrible drugs that cause horrible side effects. There's a better way to do it. So just continue the great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments from the audience? Any comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Great. I'd like to thank Mr. Grant for coming and doing this presentation for us. It was very helpful.
Thank you. And am I dismissed?
Yes.
Okay.
31. Oh, the vertical enforcement update.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Grant. We really appreciate your presence. So we'll go to item 31, Vertical Enforcement Program Update from Health Quality Investigation Unit. Ms. Nichols and Mr. Pulido.
Hello, Kathleen Nichols, Deputy Chief Health Quality Investigation Unit. I'd like to introduce you to LA Metro Area Commander Bob Pulido. Bob oversees the Los Angeles HQIU field offices located in San Dimas, Glendale, Valencia, and Cerritos, and Commander Pulido will be giving our brief HQIU update today.
Good morning, everybody. At the last board meeting, we announced that HQIU had 7 sworn investigators starting in January 2018. I am pleased to report that we have an additional 6 investigators starting this month. 4 of the 6 currently possess their post-basic certificate and will not require an academy. They are filling positions in the Glendale, Sacramento, Tustin, Concord, and San Dimas field offices. With the newly hired staff, there are currently 18 investigator vacancies, which is a 23 vacancy rate. Of the 18 vacancies, 15 additional candidates have been given conditional job offers and are completing the last phase of the background process. We anticipate their clearances within 30 to 60 days. For the remaining 3 positions, we have 7 candidates in phase 1 of the background process. There are also currently 17 limited term position special investigators working in HQIU field offices to assist with the workload. We continue to be very active in our recruiting efforts. In addition to recruiting at police departments and colleges, we sent out mailers to 80 different veterans groups in California. In February of this year, the Division of Investigation held its first annual Chief Star Award ceremony recognizing DOI employees for stellar work performance. Of the 11 awards presented, 9 were given to HQIU employees. We would like to thank Kim Kirchmeyer, Christine Lally, and Dr. Yip for participating in acknowledging our employees. We appreciate your support and the support of the board.
And I see Dr. Lewis stepped out, but I just wanted to bring up really quick, he had talked about the timelines and are we getting better, are we getting worse, what are the numbers? I just wanted to draw your attention to the board meeting packet, agenda item 24B-9, where it does list the numbers by month. And for the month of March, it's the number has decreased in the last 9 months. This is the lowest. So it's incremental, and we do expect more dramatic improvements in case aging. But as far as to answer the question, yes, it's getting better, not worse.
We got that. So I just want to make sure that we still not there yet, but we are getting better. We agree. Okay, any questions from the board? Comments? Any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no questions on the phone.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nichols and Mr. Pulido. We'll go to item 18. We have, who is the chair?
Dr. Hopkins.
Okay. So item 18 is update and possible action on recommendations from the Public Outreach, Education and Wellness Committee. Dr. Hawkins.
Thank you very much. The Public Outreach, Education and Wellness Committee met yesterday. Several members of this board are on that committee, and many of the other board members were in the room, and as well as folks in the current room. The committee first heard a presentation from board staff on the new iPhone application developed by the board staff. This app will allow consumers to follow physicians. Once followed, the app will notify the consumer if their status changes on that physician's profile via notification on that device. This app is a very exciting step in keeping consumers informed. The Medical Board of California is the first state medical board in the nation and the first board of our bureau under DCA to develop this type of app. The committee was also provided a presentation on how this app works and the functionality, and it's very consumer friendly. The app is a revolutionary new tool that the board can use to connect with consumers in a new and innovative way. The committee also heard a presentation from the board's Public Affairs Manager, Carlos Villatoro, on the Office of Public Affairs Communication Plan. The plan highlights several strategies that the board plans to implement to achieve the goals of the strategic plan. The plan is comprised of several components, including social media, podcasts, videos, a new marketing and rebranding of the board's newsletter, logo, and website. The plan will also refresh the Check Up on Your Doctor's License campaign and expand communications to community organization. The plan also includes the development of a daily blog that will provide fresh and relevant content to consumers. The committee was presented with the top 5 newsletter names. These names were submitted as part of a survey that was conducted by the Office of Public Affairs, and the board received numerous entries. The entries were submitted by various stakeholders. The committee voted to adopt Medical Board of California News as the new name of the newsletter. The committee also heard an informative presentation on Alzheimer's disease detection, diagnosis, and disease management from Terrence Kelly from the Alzheimer's Disease Program at CDPH and Dr. Sarah Kremen from the UCLA, Mary S. Eaton Center for Alzheimer's Research. Mr. Kelly and Dr. Kremen discussed the updated guidelines for Alzheimer's disease management and the Alzheimer's clinical care guidelines, which are available online at CDPH website. Mr. Kelly and Dr. Kremen also discussed early detection and diagnosis toolkit and the importance of early detection and diagnosis. They also discussed the geriatric depression and dementia scale mobile application, which is now public available for Android and iOS devices. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. I was told that we don't need to approve. You guys picked a name, so we'll keep it there.
Correct.
Any comments from the board? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. Okay, we'll go to item number 15. Update on the Health Professions Education Foundation. Ms. Lawson.
Thank you, Dr. Ganana-Dev. I first would like to thank the board for the opportunity to serve as one of its representatives on the Health Professions Education Foundation, or HPEF. And I look forward to Dr. Hawkins serving on this foundation board as well. On March 7th, I was able to attend my first meeting of the foundation board. And here's an update on those activities. Before I get there, there will be another meeting on May 16th, 2018, which we will actually be hosting at my offices in San Francisco. So an update on the activities. The 2017-18 Stephen M. Thompson Physician Core Loan Repayment Program application cycle did end on January 31st of 2018. There were 403 applications received, and 256 of those were deemed to be eligible. The selection committee finalized its selection, which is a very highly competitive process, and awarded 43 physicians practicing in medically underserved facilities throughout California. Thank you to the California Medical Board staff for assisting in reviewing and scoring this year's application. HPEF also administers the Mental Health Loan Assumption Program, which is one of the state-administered workforce education training programs. That program has a budget of $10 million each year and is scheduled to sunset at the end of fiscal year 2017-2018. This program encourages mental health providers to practice in the public mental health system by providing recipients with up to $10,000 in exchange for a 12-month service obligation. In fiscal year 2016-17, the program awarded over 1,500 individuals a total of $13 million. And as of March 2018, the program is projected to award approximately 1,300 individuals a total of $12.9 million as well. So the fact that it is scheduled to sunset is going to leave potentially a big hole. The HPEF Board of Trustees has also reestablished its development committee and is reviewing a proposal for a development consultant to assist with a new strategic fundraising plan for HPEF. That's the update. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson. I happened to be with some medical students the other day and residents. One of them mentioned, which I was almost floored, her loans were $600,000. Usual average is about $300,000 for anyone graduating for an MD school or a DO school. And this young lady, who is a first-year resident at my hospital in the emergency medicine, her loans were $600,000. So we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that these kids can really go to right places and really get some help on the loan payment. So I think your foundation is doing a great job, and we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that it's reestablished. Dr. Bolat.
Thank you for the report. Quick question: what were your number 1 and number 2 reasons for denial on the HPEF applications?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you because I didn't participate in that process, and the board really doesn't participate in the application process. Kim, I don't know if you've got any
Actually, I'm
insight
going to
into that.
ask April and Jennifer. They both sit on the selection committee. As you're going through the criteria, what are some of the things that you score individuals on?
So basically, it's a points-based system. So they ask a question, and you read the answers, and you score it. It's either 0 or 1 point on most of the questions. So basically, if they answer the question, then you score them the 1 point. But if they don't really answer the question, then they don't get that score. So it's a pretty simple scoring system. They only give us applications that are eligible. So the first thing is the number of years of experience. So that can really make or break your scoring system, because if they have a lot of months of experience, then that's a high score. And then yeah, they get 1 point for every year that they've had experience in. And so then at the bottom, there's some questions on cultural and linguistic competency that you can actually score 2 points. So they're basically, you're just looking at the answers, and you're looking to see if they meet those questions. So it's their experience. You're looking at their willingness to continue to serve in a medically underserved area. You're looking at their past and their background and why they want to work in an underserved area. Basically, you're looking to see, is this someone that will continue to work in this underserved area?
They also ask why they need the funding.
And usually it's to continue to work in an underserved area. That's what you're looking for anyway.
And then we send them back, right? And then the committee over there has the final say once they get all of the scoring on
So
those
the scoring is
individuals.
just one thing that they look at. So basically you score it, you put it into their computerized system, and the score is one thing, but they also look at what areas they're going to serve in. There's a number of things that they look at, not just the score.
Thank you. And they're trying to spread it out across the state too, so that's something they take into consideration, as well as what's the underserved area they're trying to go into.
Yeah, unfortunately, many people do not know. I mean, in my neighborhood, Inland Empire, it has been really, we're trying to let people know. I mean, it goes all the way from Coachella to High Desert, which is one of the poorest areas in the state, along with Central Valley. This is where we need, along with the inner cities. So thank you. Any other comments from the board? Comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Thank you. Going to the next item, 16, Physician Assistant Board, Ms. Kirschmeyer.
The Physician Assistant Board conducted its quarterly meeting in Sacramento on January 22nd, 2018, and they invited me, so I went and did a little bit of an update. We do reciprocal for each of our boards. So they'll be conducting their next meeting actually on Monday, April 23rd, so I'll be speaking about the actions that we've taken here as the board. Gabe Raymond, Executive Director of the California Academy of Physician Assistants, or CAPA, stated that optimal team practice continues to be a national movement. CAPA will hold stakeholder meetings over the next several months with physicians and medical groups to hear directly what their impression of what OTP is. Ms. Brayman stated, OTP is not independent practice. It is working in teams with physicians. Ms. Brayman stated OTP would, 1, emphasize PA's commitment to team practice with a degree of collaboration determined at practice level. 2, eliminate the legal requirement for a PA to have a relationship with a specific physician. 3, authorize PAs to be directly reimbursed by all private and public payers. And 4, would have an autonomous majority PA board to regulate PAs. And again, this is at the national level, so it's not just specific to right here. But anyway, Ms. Brayman stated that she will have more information to share by August of 2018 regarding the California Physician Board at that board meeting. The Education Workforce Development Advisory Committee stated that the accrediting body will meet in spring. Currently, there are 229 accredited programs within the country, of which 46 programs are in development. California currently has 14 accredited programs, of which 1 program is on probation. 7 programs have provisional accreditation, as they are new programs, and 6 programs have continuing accreditation. There are currently 5 programs developing in California, which means that within the next 3 to 4 years, there could be 19 programs within California. The committee anticipates significant growth with the number of licensees. And then Ms. Forsyth and her PA board would like to thank the board for its continued collaboration. And that ends my report for them.
Thank you, Kim. Any comments from the board? Dr. Hawkins.
Quick question. Can we just have a representative on that board? Are we required to have a representative to the PA board?
It's a governor's appointment. That's why I'm doing the update, because it has to be the governor who appoints that individual. I think part of the problem is that individual is an ex officio member, so although they sit on the board, they don't get to vote on the issues of the board. And, you know, it's hard. I don't know if any of you have had the governor's office reach out to you about being on that board, but it does take a governor's appointment, so that it's not filled yet.
Yeah, it's when I first got on the board, I got multiple calls. I said, no, thank you. Any other comments? Any comments from the audience?
I have a question. Can you
No. Please come to the front.
To the front? Here?
Yeah, and there is...
Oh, sure. I have a
This
question.
is about physician assistant board only. Remember, that's the item you are speaking on.
I'm sorry, yes, exactly. The fellowships, in specific, one was, I don't know what the word was, put on hold. Are you able to disclose which one was put on hold?
Actually, I'd have to get back to you because this is from the physician assistant board, so I'd have to get that information for you.
Okay, and when you say physician assistant, is it also including fellows?
So physician assistant board is separate from the medical board. So I'm not sure if they don't have fellows for
I think I think you're asking about PA residency programs.
Yes.
I don't think we have any information on that. I know many places do, including my hospital, have PA residency programs, but I'm not sure what the information you're looking for, what we can give you.
I understand. She just said one was put on probation. I wanted to know which one that was.
So if you give me your information afterwards, I'll get back with you.
Sure, of course. Additionally, I assume that the physician assistant program is the same as the fellow program. We have brought many complaints to the board about fellows doing procedures.
I'm sorry, you're talking about in a different matter.
Okay.
Fellowships are related to physicians, but this is the physician assistant board update.
Okay. So will that come up later?
Not today.
Not today.
So the next time when it comes to public comment, we'll be happy to take your comments.
Can I please just say that I've contacted Kimberly Kirchmeyer of the board many times, and she's promised to look into it, and then has closed our complaints without investigation. And I find this to be very disturbing because a lot of us were disfigured by letting fellows work on us in outside clinics that had no relevance, they weren't physically close to USC, and this is a regulatory thing that has not been looked into by the state, and you guys keep closing our complaints, and I have many complaints: necrosis, pneumothorax, all of my mouth muscles were cut off. I had to pay $100,000 for reconstructive procedures. It is very unsafe that this continues, and I'm not sure what the state interest is in not investigating any of these doctors.
Yeah, I think Ms. Kirshmer will talk to you after the meeting, but there is also one thing you do need to remember, that all the fellows on the physician side, they're licensed physicians. They're already licensed. Usually you have to be licensed by second or third year of your residency. And the
With all due respect, your Excellency, no, these were unconsented procedures in an outside Beverly Hills clinic, and many people were disfigured, and we reported it starting in 2012, and you guys kept shutting it down without investigation, which sends a very strange message to the public because you are the ones that are supposed to enforce it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the audience? Any comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Thank you, and we'll go to item number 17, update on the Physician Health and Wellness Program.
So I've really, actually, in my update, I gave the update. The regulations have gone to the Department of Consumer Affairs, and they are pending. Again, they could be changed depending on the changes that are made to the uniform standards. So that's our update on the Physician Health and Wellness Program.
Any questions to Ms. Kashmaya? From the board, any comments from the audience? Comments on the phone?
There are no comments on the phone.
Thank you. Going to the last item. Okay, agenda items for July 2018 board meeting in the San Francisco area. Members, Dr. Lewis. Yes. We'll put a little shock next to him. Each time he's away, just push a button.
No. There we go. There, is that better? I've been hearing in the news, the last couple of months about social media addiction. We talk about opioid addiction, and sometime in the future, I'm not sure if this is the right venue to discuss that. But I think social media addiction, especially in our adolescents, is going to become a real health problem. So I just throw it out there for some time in the future. Okay,
I don't know, Dr. Lewis. We can ask someone to make a presentation of what physicians can do with the social media.
Could it be broader than just social media? Yeah, could it be broader than social media technology overall? Because there are people who use games online, who get lost online for hours and hours, and then of course you have what's in your hand, the device, which you're referencing as social media. So it's technology, right, and the overconsumption of technology and the impact that has. I think if we could do it broader.
Well, Kim, you got to find some experts on. So if you could find. If you could find, it's good. And also, I think somebody, if there are any studies and see if there is anything we can do, that will be great. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Dr. Bollard.
Yeah, I wanted to see if we could talk about we represent all Californians, and one group that doesn't get represented are injured workers, and that's because we do not oversee injured workers. That's a whole nother group within the government. And with that, it makes me concerned about the fact that many of these people in this group are suffering from chronic pain, and they're on high-dose opioids, and we're not looking at that because it's not that we as a medical board aren't, but I think it would be a good information for our consumers to understand, and for doctors as well, because if we don't know someone is in the workers' comp arena, we're not going to know they're even they sometimes don't disclose that they're getting medications from another doctor. And so those things are challenging because that information doesn't get into our regular databases, gets into cures, but you don't walk in and see a patient and just look up a cures if you're not the prescriber. So those are things that I think are important to look at, and just an overview of the California injured worker workforce.
Okay, Dr. Cross.
I learned a lot from our presentation at this meeting by someone who's involved with a sobering center. At some future meeting this year, I'd also like to have a presentation for someone involved in one of the mental health clinics that patients are being diverted to rather than being taken directly to emergency rooms.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So, anything else from the board? Audience? Phones?
And there is a comment from Eric Andrus. Your line is now open.
Go ahead, Eric.
Dev, you're making it very hard for me to play nice when you patronize me. Remember when Exxon lied to the public and its investors and said there was nothing to worry about? Unless you're personally working in every medical board office on a daily basis, you cannot assure me that complaints aren't being thrown out, because my complaint was, and many others that were being investigated were throwing out, and now another person just came forward and said that her complaint was thrown out. So how can you assure me that complaints aren't being thrown out? We need an agenda item talking about so many legitimate complaints are being closed without investigation. It makes one wonder if your experts are truly qualified to be making these decisions, and we can't find out as the public because you hide information when we ask for it. This is why we're now asking for a patient's Bill of Rights for transparency, because you guys are not transparent. And to finish up real quick about my comments that got cut off this morning, my email address is stopmicra@gmail.com. I promised Dr. Krause not to abuse this private email address when he offered to stay in touch with me on important issues, and I will honor that. If any others would like to work with us on making this board the best it can be, please email me and join us. Not hearing from you will indicate your position on the matter. Thank you for supporting SB 1448 last night. It was very, very hope-inspiring. And also, this will be the 6th or 7th time now, I've lost track, that I've asked for the Public Records Act problem with Carrie Webb to be placed on the agenda. It's still not on there, Kimberly. What's going on? Why are you hiding this issue? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Andrist. Any other comments on the phone?
No additional comments on the phone.
Thank you. I think I kept... we have one more? One more comment. Well, got your 3 minutes, but go ahead very quickly, though, please.
Very quickly, I reported again to the board. My name is Lisa Douglas. I again reported to the board a malpractice that was won against the surgeon that did this to me in 1998. She won $100,000. Kimberly Kirchmeyer told me I could write this whole thing because it says that the legislation is to be read liberally. The Business and Professions Code is with public safety in mind, yet I wrote this whole thing. I went down and scanned it out of microfiche. I called and I got an affidavit from Ms. Tippick, and you again ignored me, closed it down, and did nothing about this. So there are malpractice cases floating around that you know about. It has been reported. Necrosis has been reported, and you will not investigate. What this, I just said, they said, is this you? And I said, no, and then they never wrote to me again. And then Kimberly Kirchmeyer started to ignore my emails. I'm saying this is a public safety hazard, and the medical board is refusing, although they know what's happening. So I just want to have that on the record as well.
Thank you. Oh, we're done. So, well, item 33, right? Which is adjournment. We're done till July. Thank you.